So what does a 16th century drawing of a rhinoceros, the total downfall of the Western Union Telegraph Company, and a gardener all have in common?
Well, it sounds like a joke setup, but it's actually...
Right, that totally sounds like a punchline. But they actually hold the secret to why so many of us are just driving in circles, like
Yeah.
really fast instead of actually getting where we want to go.
Oh, absolutely. It's that illusion of speed.
Exactly. I mean, most of us wake up, we look at our calendars, and we think we have a strategy. We
Mhm.
really do. We think because we're busy, because we're, crossing items off a list, that we're moving forward.
Yeah, but checking boxes is not a strategy. I mean, it's just following instructions.
Yes. And that's exactly what we're getting into today. Welcome to today's deep dive. We are exploring the introduction and the very first core concept of a pretty revolutionary approach to strategy.
It really flips the whole concept on its head.
It does. You're about to learn why strategy isn't this complex, rigid map that's just reserved for corporate MBAs. It's actually more of a personal compass for, becoming.
A philosophy of becoming, right?
Yeah. And if you've been feeling exhausted, like you're just sprinting on a treadmill, but your business or your project or even your career is fundamentally stuck, this conversation is it's gonna dismantle everything you thought you knew about getting unstuck.
It really is a complete dismantling of the whole industrial mindset we've all inherited. I mean, for generations, the word strategy just felt like something locked away in a boardroom somewhere.
Oh, for sure. Like it was for guys in suits.
Right, exactly. It was for diplomats running nations or, executives at massive conglomerates like Alcoa or Kodak. West Point generals had strategies.
Yeah, the heavy hitters.
But for the typical person, someone just working in a company or starting a small business or writing a book, strategy wasn't even on the radar. Like, the television networks had a strategy for what they would broadcast, and our job was simply to consume it.
Just sit back and watch.
Exactly. The factory had a strategy for production, and our job was to just pull the lever. We were essentially trained to ask, what happens next?
Yeah.
Instead of asking, what will I do now?
Man, that distinction right there. What happens next versus what will I do now?
Yeah.
I mean, that is the core tension of modern work, isn't it?
It really is.
Because asking what happens next is just entirely passive. It implies you're just, I don't know, sitting in the passenger seat waiting for the driver to make a turn.
You're just along for the ride.
Right. And for a long time, that worked. I mean, if you just kept your head down and did what you were told, the system rewarded you. You got the gold watch at the end of 30 years.
The safe path.
Yeah, the safe path. But the sources we're diving into today make it very, very clear that the world is in the midst of this massive fracturing. The easy out of just following the checklist, it's disappearing entirely.
Oh, it's gone. The systems are just shifting way too fast now.
And when the systems shift, the people who are only equipped with a checklist find themselves completely paralyzed.
Right. Absolutely paralyzed. This is where we run into the first major hurdle, because strategy is often viewed as this unseen elitist option. People just ignore it.
It feels too abstract.
Exactly. It feels sophisticated or abstract, so they default to what they know, which is usually just trying to work harder at their assigned tasks.
Hustle culture, basically.
Right. They mistake motion for progress. They assume that if the speedometer says 90 miles an hour, they must be succeeding, but they never actually check if they're heading toward a cliff.
Which brings up, honestly, one of my absolute favorite historical examples from our sources today. It is just the perfect illustration of working harder at the absolute wrong thing.
Oh, I know where you're going with this.
Yeah, I want to spend a minute looking at two totally different corporate paths here. Nintendo and Western Union, two companies that faced massive world-altering technological shifts. Let's start with Nintendo. Most people, they don't actually know they started as a playing card company.
They did. Hanafuda cards, specifically.
Right, Hanafuda cards. So they're making these physical playing cards. And suddenly, the digital revolution begins. Video games start to emerge. Now, if Nintendo had just been following a checklist, they would have said, how do we make our cardboard playing cards glossier? How do we print them faster?
You would have optimized the card.
Exactly. Optimize the cardboard. But they didn't do that. They saw the unseen strategy. They recognized that their core business wasn't actually cardboard at all. It was entertainment. It was play.
Right. The medium didn't matter.
Exactly. So they completely abandoned the cards and pivoted to video games. And, well, we all know how that turned out. Now, contrast that with Western Union.
Oh, man. The Western Union story is just the quintessential cautionary tale of operational blindness.
It really is. So Alexander Graham Bell literally walks up to Western Union and offers them the patents to the telephone. He is handing them the future of human communication on a silver platter.
Just here you go.
Right. And what does Western Union do? They turn him down.
The psychology behind that rejection is what we really, really need to examine here. Because Western Union wasn't run by foolish people.
No, they were incredibly successful.
Very successful. They had brilliant engineers and sharp businessmen. But their entire identity, their entire infrastructure was built around the telegraph. I mean, they had thousands of miles of wire, thousands of operators trained specifically in Morse code.
It was a massive sunk cost.
Exactly. So when they looked at the telephone, they didn't see a revolution. They just saw a threat to their checklist. Their internal narrative was, we are a telegraph company.
Not a communication company, a telegraph company.
Right. So instead of embracing the shift, they just poured all their resources into trying to make better telegrams.
But wait, let me play devil's advocate for a second here. Put yourself in the shoes of a Western Union executive in that boardroom back then. Isn't it a bit easy for us, sitting here over a century later to call them blind?
Well, hindsight is 20/20, sure.
Right. I mean, they had a massive profitable business. How is a founder or a manager supposed to know the difference between a passing fad and a telephone-level paradigm shift?
That is the perfect question. And it cuts right to the heart of why strategy is so terrifying for people. You don't know for sure. There is no guarantee.
So it's just a gamble.
Well, no, because the difference is that Western Union didn't even ask the strategic question. They only asked the operational question. Like you said, they were blinded by their own sunk costs.
Ah, I see.
They were so deeply invested in the granular details of their current operation that they just refused to see the overarching shift in human behavior. I mean, people didn't inherently want telegram.
No, they just wanted to talk to people far away.
Exactly. They wanted to communicate over long distances. The telephone did that better. Western Union failed because they were trying to build a better telegram in a telephone world.
Oh, man. That phrase gives me chills. Trying to build a better telegram in a telephone world.
It's a trap so many businesses fall into.
It really is. And the hardest thing for anyone listening right now, and, I struggle with this too, is taking a brutal step back and asking, am I optimizing a telegram right now?
It's a painful question to ask.
So painful because we get so addicted to the dopamine hit of clearing out our inbox or, tweaking the font on our website or matching our competitor's latest feature. We feel productive, but we don't realize the entire industry has just moved on.
We hide in the details because the details are safe.
Totally.
If you are focused on making the telegram 10% faster, you're busy. You feel like you're doing your job. But if you stop and say, actually, the telegram is dead, we need to invent voice transmission.
Yeah.
Well, suddenly you're on the hook.
Irresponsible.
Right. You are responsible for a terrifying leap into the unknown. Strategy is risky. It forces you to make a choice. And making a choice means you might be wrong.
It's the fear of being a meaningful specific rather than just a wandering generality. Like if you just check boxes and the company fails, you can shrug and say, hey, I did my job. I sent the emails.
I hit my KPIs.
Right. I hit my KPIs. You blame the market. But if you author a strategy and it fails, that is on you.
Exactly.
So how do we get past that fear? If we know we need to stop optimizing telegrams, how do we actually start sketching out a strategy without getting totally paralyzed by the need for perfect information?
Well, this is where your rhinoceros comes in.
Yes. This is where the text introduces that 16th century rhinoceros, and I think it's just one of the most brilliant analogies I've ever heard.
Albrecht Dürer's rhinoceros. It really is a masterpiece of historical context.
Let's paint the picture for the listener here. So the year is 1515. Albrecht Dürer, an artist in Europe, creates this woodcut poster of an Indian rhinoceros. But here's the catch. Dürer had never seen a rhino in his entire life.
Never. Almost no one in Europe had at that point.
Right. So he based this incredibly detailed woodcut entirely on a written letter and a quick little sketch sent to him by some unknown artist who had seen one in Lisbon.
Just secondhand information.
Completely secondhand. So Dürer goes to work, and the drawing he produces is objectively, factually wrong in its granular details. Like, he draws the rhino with these hard, riveted plates of armor, almost like a medieval knight.
It looks like a tank.
It does. And he puts these strange reptilian scales on its legs. He even adds a little twisted horn on its back, almost like a unicorn. The details are just completely incorrect.
And yet it became one of the most famous and influential animal depictions in European history.
Exactly. Sorry, she just hit the nail on the head. It was influential because despite the scales and the armor, if you look at that woodcut, the essence of a rhinoceros absolutely punches you in the face.
You immediately know what it's supposed to be.
Yeah, you look at it and you instantly understand the heavy, armored, unstoppable power of that beast. He captured the fundamental truth of the animal, even though his data was flawed.
He got the shape right.
He got the shape right. But, okay, I've got to challenge this when we apply it to modern business.
Go for it.
If I walk into a pitch meeting with an investor, or if I present a 5-year plan to my team, and my details are the equivalent of a rhino with scales and a unicorn horn, I mean, I'm going to get laughed out of the room. Isn't it incredibly dangerous to move forward with a strategy if you know your facts are fuzzy?
Well, that anxiety you're describing, that is the exact indoctrination of the industrial system we were talking about earlier.
Really?
Yeah. We have been taught from childhood, through standardized testing and corporate management structures, that you must have the quote-unquote right answer before you even raise your hand.
Oh, that makes sense. We're terrified of being wrong.
Exactly. We seek absolute certainty. We want the perfect business plan, the flawless market research, the guaranteed return on investment. But the text explicitly defines strategy as a recursive, an elliptical narrative.
Wait, elliptical meaning it circles back on itself.
Yes. It means it is not a straight line from point A to point B. It is an ongoing process of asserting a truth, testing it, and refining it. Strategy is not about having perfect granular details on day one.
Because things change.
Because you cannot accurately predict the future. It is physically and mathematically impossible to account for every variable in a complex market. A strategy is simply an assertion.
An assertion.
Right. It's you saying, I believe the world is moving in this direction, and we will move to meet it. Of course, some of your details will be wrong. You will miss a budget. A competitor will launch something unexpected. Some global event will disrupt your supply chain.
So you're saying the pursuit of perfect details is actually a trap?
Oh, it is often a highly sophisticated form of stalling.
Wow.
Stalling.
Yeah, we say things like, I can't launch this deep dive until I have the perfect microphone and a 6-month content calendar, or I can't start this business until my website has flawlessly optimized code.
I feel personally attacked right now.
We all do it.
Mm.
But the strategy, the essence of what you are trying to build is what allows you to navigate the incorrect details. I mean, if Dürer had waited until he could travel all the way to India to see a rhino with his own eyes, the woodcut would never have existed.
It would have never happened. Right. He moved forward with the essence. Once you understand the essence of your strategy, your subsequent tactical steps become clear, even when the environment changes.
It's trusting the shape of the thing over the microscopic pixels.
Exactly.
You know, if you're listening right now and feeling completely stuck in the planning phase of a project, this is your reality check. Are you using research and planning as an excuse to avoid making a strategic assertion?
It's a tough question to face.
It really is. Having the courage to draw the rhino, knowing full well you might get the scales on the legs wrong, is the only way to break out of that telegram mindset we talked about.
Absolutely.
But, that requires a massive shift in how we view our navigation tools. Yeah. If we abandon the perfect blueprint, the perfect plan, what do we replace it with?
We replace the map with a compass.
A compass. A strategy isn't a map, it's a compass. Let's dig deep into this, because this is where the philosophy of the source material gets intensely practical. Why is a map so dangerous in today's world?
Think about the fundamental nature of a map. A map implies a static environment. It represents a guaranteed step-by-step route where the terrain never, ever changes.
Right, like a paper map in your glove box.
Exactly. If you look at a street map from 1995, it assumes the roads will be in the exact same place today. It assumes the one-way streets haven't reversed. In a stable, slow-moving world, a map is fantastic.
Sure, if nothing ever changes.
But as we've established, we are in a period of great fracturing. Opportunities and problems are created and destroyed overnight.
Right. So imagine relying on a rigid, printed-out set of directions. It says, drive straight on Highway 9 for 10 miles, then turn left at the bridge.
Okay.
So you drive 10 miles, you get to the river, and the bridge is just completely washed out. It's gone. If you only have a map, you are entirely stranded. You suffer a total coordination failure because the map has no capacity to process a washed-out bridge.
It has zero adaptive capability. The map says this is the only way, and when that way is blocked, the journey just ends.
But a compass is totally different.
Completely different.
A compass doesn't care about the bridge. A compass simply points north. It gives you an overarching direction toward better.
Yes.
So if the bridge is out, you aren't paralyzed. You can take a detour through the woods, you can hike around the mountain, you can find a shallow point in the river to cross because you constantly know which way north is.
And your strategy is that compass.
Mm.
It allows you to pivot your daily tactics wildly because your overarching direction hasn't changed.
It keeps you oriented.
Yeah.
But how do you calibrate that compass? That is the genius of this framework, I think. The text defines strategy fundamentally as a philosophy of becoming.
Right. It is the hard work of choosing what to do today to make tomorrow better.
And it calibrates this compass using 3 incredibly radical questions. Let's walk through these 3 questions, and I want to apply them to a real-world scenario so we aren't just talking in abstractions here.
That was good.
Okay, so the 3 questions that define a strategy are, number 1, who will we become? Number 2, who will we be of service to? And number 3, who will they help others to become?
What should immediately stand out to anyone versed in traditional business strategy is what is entirely absent from that list.
Yeah, there is no mention of profit margins anywhere.
None.
There's no what product will we ship by Q3. There's no how do we maximize shareholder value or how do we beat the competition.
Because those are metrics. They are outcomes. They are not a strategy. These 3 questions are entirely focused on transformation.
Human transformation.
Exactly. Strategy, in this view, is about human impact and service.
Yeah.
It is a deeply empathetic approach to commerce and creation.
Let's break down the first one. Who will we become?
This question acknowledges a really profound truth. The work changes the worker.
Oh, I love that phrasing. The work changes the worker.
It's unavoidable. When you embark on a significant project, you are investing your future self. You are spending the days ahead. If you succeed in this venture, you will not be the same person or the same organization that you were when you started.
You adapt to the work.
Right. You will have built new habits, new relationships, a new culture. This question forces you to have the foresight to look at the end of the journey and ask, is the person I am becoming a cause for celebration or heartbreak?
Man, that hits so hard because we've all met people who built incredibly lucrative businesses, but the process turned them into paranoid, miserable micromanagers.
We see it all the time.
Their map was just to make $1 million, and they got to the destination. But their compass was broken. They didn't ask who they would become along the way.
You can't compartmentalize it.
No, you can't just say, I'm doing this toxic job just for the funding, but I won't let it affect my soul. The strategy you choose dictates the identity you form.
Which brings us directly to the second calibration point on the compass. Who will we be of service to? And notice that the phrasing there. It doesn't ask who will we sell to.
Right, or who is our target demographic?
Exactly. It asks about service.
And this is where the concept of the minimum viable audience comes in, which I know causes a lot of panic for entrepreneurs. The source text talks about the trap of saying, I'm for anyone. You can pick anyone. My product is for everyone.
It's such a common trap.
Why is trying to serve everyone actually a non-strategy?
Because it is physically and mathematically impossible to matter to everyone. The need for a unanimous standing ovation is an ego-driven trap.
Ego again?
Always. When you try to make something that pleases everyone, you inevitably water it down until it is so bland and generic that it doesn't deeply resonate with anyone. It just becomes background noise.
Okay, let's ground this. Let's imagine a listener who runs a local graphic design agency. If they are just following a traditional map, their goal is just get more clients.
Right. Whoever pays the bills.
Exactly. So they take on a plumbing company, a luxury real estate broker, a fast food franchise, and a local yoga studio. They are trying to be for everyone.
And as a result, they can't develop a unique expertise. Their portfolio is completely scattered. They are constantly competing on price because they offer nothing specialized.
They're just another vendor.
Exactly.
Right. But if they use this compass, they have to answer, who will we be of service to? Let's say they decide, we only serve sustainable, eco-friendly local brands.
Which is terrifying to do.
Oh, it's terrifying. They just cut out 90% of their potential market. But suddenly, they are a meaningful specific. They aren't just another agency. They are the agency for green businesses.
And that specific focus is what allows them to answer the third and perhaps most profound question on the compass. Who will they help others to become?
The ripple effect.
The ripple effect. This is where you see the whole system.
Explain that a bit more.
Well, this is the ultimate expression of systems thinking. Your work doesn't exist in a vacuum.
When you serve your specific audience, you are equipping them. You are giving them a story, a tool, or a badge of identity.
Okay, I see. If your strategy is successful, your audience doesn't just consume your product and remain silent. They use what you made to gain status or affiliation or to overcome a fear within their own communities.
Going back to our graphic design agency example.
Right.
If their compass says, we help eco-friendly brands, then the third question is, who do those eco-brands help others become? Well, they help everyday consumers become more mindful, sustainable citizens.
Rack.
So the graphic design agency isn't just making logos anymore. Their overarching strategy, their true north, is facilitating a greener local economy through design. That changes every single tactical decision they make tomorrow morning.
It shifts the entire paradigm from a transactional mindset to a deeply transformational one. You are no longer just pushing a product, you're creating the conditions for change.
It's so much bigger.
It is. Your strategy is the narrative for how you will engage with your project over time to cause that chain reaction.
So, if you're listening right now and feeling lost, I mean this sincerely. Pause. Throw away the 10-page business plan that is making you miserable. Just write down these 3 questions. Who will you become? Who will you serve? Who will they help others become?
It clarifies everything.
It really does. If you can answer those honestly, you have a compass. And once you have a compass, you know which way to walk.
Yes.
But, and this is a massive but, knowing which way to walk doesn't magically pave the road for you. The real world has friction.
Oh, plenty of it.
So how do we take this beautiful philosophy of becoming and actually apply it to the messy, unpredictable reality of building a product or a career?
Well, that requires us to move from the abstract philosophy of the compass into the tangible mechanics of growth.
Yeah.
We have to look at the ecosystem of strategy.
The ecosystem, the text uses a brilliant metaphor for this. It states, strategy is the soil, the seed, and the gardener working together over time.
It's a great image.
I want to dissect this entirely because I think it removes so much of the toxic guilt associated with failure. Let's start with the seed.
Okay, the seed is the most tangible part of the equation. It is your idea. It's your specific project, your offering, the app you're coding, the book you're writing.
It's the thing.
Right, it's the kernel of value you want to introduce to the world.
And the seed is where we spend, 99% of our time? We obsess over the seed. We polish it. We tweak the packaging. We endlessly debate the pricing model. We are convinced that if the seed is genetically perfect, success is just guaranteed.
But a seed, no matter how perfect, cannot do anything on its own.
Right.
It is pure potential locked in a shell. To realize that potential, it requires the soil.
The soil, this is the part we almost always ignore. What exactly is the soil in this metaphor?
The soil represents the system you are planting into. It is the complex web of external factors. It's the current market conditions, the cultural zeitgeist, the economic constraints, the existing infrastructure,
Yep.
and the feedback loops of your specific industry.
So it's the environment.
Exactly. The soil is everything outside of your control that your idea must interact with to survive.
Man, this is such a revelation. Because you can have the most incredible revolutionary seed in the world, but if you plant it in solid concrete, nothing will happen.
Nothing at all.
Or, to use a different angle, what if you plant a beautiful tropical mango seed in the frozen tundra of Antarctica? The seed isn't defective, it's a great seed. But the empathy for the system, the understanding of the soil, was completely absent.
And that lack of empathy for the system is why so many brilliant products fail. The creator blames the audience, saying, they just didn't get it.
The market is stupid.
Right. But it wasn't the audience's job to get it. It was the creator's job to understand the soil. You cannot force a market to want something it is not culturally or economically prepared to absorb.
Which is such a massive reframe for anyone who has ever experienced a business failure. Normally, when a project tanks, we internalize the shame. We say, my idea was stupid, or I didn't hustle hard enough, I didn't wake up at 4 a.m.
It becomes a personal failing.
Yeah. But this ecosystem approach forces you to ask a diagnostic question instead. Did I plant a good seed in toxic soil?
And that diagnostic process brings us to the third element, the gardener.
The gardener?
Gardener is you. You are the strategist. You are the one doing the consistent daily work.
Because even if you have rich, fertile soil and a brilliant, viable seed, if you just throw it in the dirt and walk away,
It dies.
it dies. If you forget to water it, if you don't pull the weeds, if you don't protect it from pests, the ecosystem just collapses.
Exactly. And the most crucial element that binds the gardener, the seed, and the soil together is the unseen axis of time.
Time. The text makes a point about this that is almost comical, but so profound. It says, a gardener doesn't yell at a seed to grow faster.
Just imagine it for a second. A gardener standing over a patch of dirt with a megaphone shouting, "Hustle! Leverage! Optimize your growth metrics."
Right. It's absurd. But we laugh because that is exactly what modern hustle culture tells us to do.
It really is.
We launch a podcast or a product, and 3 weeks later, we are staring at the analytics dashboard screaming, why hasn't this scaled yet?
We treat growth like an event. But real change, structural change, is never an event. It happens over time. Not right now, but bit by bit, move by move, day by day.
It's slow.
Very slow. Strategy requires immense patience. It requires an understanding that there is an inevitable delay between the hard work of planting today and the harvest of tomorrow. Your work touches the market, and the market takes time to touch back.
It's a rhythm, like step and response.
Exactly.
But let's put this into practice. The source material mentions this hypothetical guy in the intro, Charles Wilson. It says, Charles Wilson has a problem, he's one of the great pianists, and then implies he is fundamentally stuck in his career.
Right, he's stuck.
Let's use our ecosystem framework to diagnose Charles. If he is one of the great pianists, we know the seed is good. His talent, his music is a viable seed, so why is he stuck?
Well, if the seed is viable, we must look at the soil and the gardener. Perhaps the problem is the soil. Is Charles trying to play classical piano in a city that only has venues for heavy metal?
Bad environment.
Right. Or is he playing repertoire that the current cultural climate just finds completely irrelevant? If the soil's hostile, no amount of practice is going to make him famous there.
Or maybe the problem is the gardener. Charles might be a great pianist, but a terrible strategist.
Very common with artists.
Yeah. Maybe he refuses to market himself because he thinks it's beneath the art. Maybe he isn't watering the seeds of his network. He isn't booking gigs. He's just sitting in his room playing perfectly, waiting for someone to knock on his door.
Precisely. It is an ecosystem. You have to read the soil. If there is a drought, the gardener has to adjust the watering tactics. If a new pest arrives, the gardener has to adapt.
But the content stays the same.
Exactly. The overarching strategy of growing the garden remains true, guided by the compass, but the daily tactics are completely responsive to the reality of the soil.
So if you are listening to this and you feel stuck, just start blaming your own lack of hustle for a minute. Take a breath and diagnose your ecosystem. Is your product fundamentally flawed?
That's a seed problem.
Right. Are you trying to sell to a demographic that doesn't have the money or the desire for it?
That's a soil problem.
Or are you just lacking the patience to let it grow, pulling it up by the roots every 2 weeks to check on it?
That's a gardener problem.
But here is the tricky part about diagnosing our own gardens. We are incredibly biased. We have massive blind spots.
Oh, we are notoriously terrible at reading our own labels from inside the jar.
Yes, inside the jar, we are so emotionally invested in the seed we created that we will deny the soil is concrete until our hands are literally bleeding from trying to dig into it.
We just can't see it objectively.
Which leads us to the final and arguably most uncomfortable piece of this strategic puzzle. A gardener might work alone in the dirt, but a successful strategist cannot operate in a vacuum.
No, they can't.
If we want to know if our compass is truly pointing north, we need friction. We need what the text calls the crucible of community.
Finding the others.
Finding the others.
Transforming your relationship with strategy requires social tension. It demands vocalization.
The author actually outlines a highly specific methodology for how to read and use this material. Like, it is not meant to be read passively on a beach. It is a call to action.
It's an active workbook, almost.
Yeah. The text challenges the reader to form a strategy pod, a group of 3 or 4 people, meeting in person or on Zoom once a week.
And the agenda for those meetings is absolutely critical. They aren't gathering to pat each other on the back or just summarize the chapters.
No book club vibes.
Exactly, no book club vibes. They are there to make assertions, highlight their fears, and actually map out their paths.
But the part that absolutely stopped me in my tracks, and I want your psychological read on this, is a specific instruction the author gives. He tells the reader to discuss the parts of the text that they don't want to be true.
Yeah, that's a tough one.
Why? Why focus on the resistance? Why actively seek out the things that make us uncomfortable?
Because the things we desperately do not want to be true are almost always the exact boundaries of our comfort zones. They act as, like, flares pointing directly to our reliance on the status quo.
Give me an example of that. What is something an entrepreneur wouldn't want to be true?
Well, Let's go back to the concept of the minimum viable audience.
Yeah.
You have to exclude people to be specific enough to matter, right?
Right.
A massive portion of entrepreneurs read that and deeply, viscerally do not want it to be true. They want to believe their software or their coaching program or their bakery is for absolutely everyone.
Because anything else feels like losing money.
Exactly. Acknowledging that it is only for a specific few feels incredibly risky. It triggers a scarcity mindset. It feels like leaving money on the table.
So they hide behind the non-strategy of I'm for everyone.
And by doing that, they ensure they matter to no one.
Wow.
We hide behind non-strategies because a real strategy puts our ego on the chopping block.
There's that ego again.
Always. If I tell my group, my new software is specifically designed to help freelance architects streamline their billing, and it completely fails with freelance architects. I have failed. I was unequivocally wrong.
There's nowhere to hide.
Right. But if I say my software is for any professional who wants to be more productive, and it fails, I can protect my ego. I can blame the algorithm, the economy, or just bad luck.
It's bad luck paralysis. We prefer the safety of vague failure over the sharp sting of specific rejection.
Yes, exactly. So by forcing yourself to sit in a room, look 3 trusted peers in the eye, and vocalize the things you don't want to be true, you are actively dismantling that ego defense.
You're calling yourself out.
You are. You are exposing the resistance that is keeping you on the treadmill. It creates a deeply productive tension.
Tension is a huge theme here. The book is actually dedicated to the idea that change creates tension. It's one of the first things you read.
Because you cannot have change without tension. When you introduce your strategy to the world, the people you seek to serve will feel tension.
Like hesitation to buy.
Yeah, they will wonder, will this work? Can I afford it? If I use this product, will it make me look stupid to my peers? That is their tension.
Right.
And as the strategist, you have to be willing to experience your own tension first within the safety of a small community before you can help your audience navigate theirs.
It's like stress testing the hull of a submarine before you drop it into the Mariana Trench. You need to know where the leaks are while you're still in the dry dock.
That's a perfect analogy.
But what I found really fascinating is that the text acknowledges our modern reality. Not everyone can coordinate schedules to find 3 or 4 peers every single week.
It's tough for a lot of people.
It is. So the author provides a distinctly 21st century alternative here.
The inclusion of artificial intelligence as a strategic tool, specifically using large language models like Claude as a sparring partner.
This blew my mind, honestly. The text suggests taking the questions, the lists, and the challenges in the book and using them as direct prompts for the AI. You feed the AI the details of your specific project, and it personalizes the challenge. It forces you to defend your strategy.
It is a brilliant, highly pragmatic application of technology. Because what is the underlying mechanism at play here? It is a feedback loop.
Right.
When you are alone in your own head, your intuition feels flawless. But intuition, as the text points out later, is often just strategy without a narrative.
Oh, that's good. Strategy without a narrative.
You need a narrative. You need to be able to explain it, defend it, find the holes in it, and iterate on it.
And you can't iterate on a ghost. If the strategy only exists in your mind as a vague feeling of, I'm going to make this awesome, there is nothing to critique.
Precisely. Whether you are speaking to a Zoom room of peers or typing into an AI interface, the physical act of articulation is what crystallizes the strategy. It forces the abstract hope into a concrete, actionable blueprint. And as we know, hope is a wonderful emotion, but it is a terrible strategy.
Hope is definitely not a plan. So the mandate here is clear. Do not do strategy in a vacuum. Don't sit alone in your home office trying to perfectly map out the next 5 years of your life without running it by anyone.
It won't work.
Form a pod. Find trusted peers. Or, tonight, open up an AI tool and start stress testing your assertions. Start talking about the parts of your industry that you desperately don't want to be true, because I guarantee that is exactly where your breakthrough is hiding.
That is where the friction is, and friction is an absolute requirement for traction.
Okay, let's step back and look at the entire landscape we've covered today, because this introduction really lays the groundwork for a total paradigm shift in how we approach our work and our impact.
It really does. It democratizes strategy. It pulls it down from the ivory tower of the corporate boardroom and places it directly into the hands of the individual creator, the small business owner, the leader, who actually wants to instigate meaningful change.
So if we weave all these threads together, strategy is not a rigid, unyielding corporate document that you lock in a filing cabinet somewhere.
No.
It is a living, breathing philosophy of becoming. It is the audacious courage to sketch the rhinoceros, knowing your details might be fuzzy, but trusting that your grasp of the essence is true.
Well said. It is the wisdom to abandon the false security of a map and instead navigate with a compass, knowing that when the terrain shifts and the bridge washes out, you won't be paralyzed because you know exactly who you are serving and who you are helping them become.
It is the deep, grounding patience of the gardener, the understanding that you are tending to an ecosystem of seed and soil, and that real structural growth happens over time, not overnight.
And ultimately, it is the vulnerability to step out of your isolation, to bring your fears, your ego, and things you don't want to be true into the crucible of a community, allowing that productive tension to forge a resilient path forward.
When you combine those elements, you step off the treadmill. You are no longer just reacting to events or awaiting instructions from the system. You are actively building a practice. You have what you need to make a real plan. But I want to leave you with a thought to mull over tonight, one that takes this a step further.
Oh, I like where this is going.
We've talked a lot about trusting your compass. But what happens when your compass points you directly into a storm? How do you distinguish between the necessary friction of finding the others and the clear, undeniable signal that you've simply planted a good seed in toxic soil? Knowing when to push through the tension and when to pack up your seeds and find a new garden is the true art of the strategist. Next time, we'll see what happens when you weave this philosophy into the four threads that make up our world: time, games, empathy, and systems. Until then, keep your compass steady. When the person you could have been meets the person you are becoming, is that going to be a cause for celebration or heartbreak?
Oh, wow. I mean, honestly,
Yeah.
it's heartbreaking for a lot of people
Right.
because we basically spend the first 20 years of our lives being, aggressively trained to be passive.
Right. Like from kindergarten onward.
Exactly. Society conditions us to wait for a checklist. We're taught to sit quietly at a desk, do the assigned homework, wait to be picked, and just rely on instructions from some authority figure.
We learn how to be highly efficient cogs.
We do. But we are explicitly not taught how to chart our own course.
Which, that makes that opening question hit like a ton of bricks. And for you listening right now, just sit with that tension for a second. Because we usually think of the word strategy as this, cold, lifeless corporate buzzword.
Right, like a PowerPoint presentation for Fortune 500 CEOs.
Exactly. Or some map on a table where generals are moving little plastic tanks around. But diving into our sources today, specifically looking at Chapter 2 of our core text for this deep dive, the premise fundamentally shatters that whole assumption.
It completely reframes it.
Strategy isn't a business plan. It's a philosophy of becoming. It's this active discipline of figuring out who you actually intend to be rather than just waiting for some system to tell you what your utility is.
And in the next hour or so, we're really pulling apart the core mechanics of that philosophy. So for anyone out there navigating a career, building a business, or frankly, just trying to live with a bit more intention, we're going to deconstruct 4 underlying threads.
And those are time, games, empathy, and systems.
Right on. Time, games, empathy, and systems. And by the end of this deep dive, the goal is to give you the exact framework you need to step out of that path of cog role and start designing your actual interaction with the world.
But before we hit the mechanics, we have to talk about the rhinoceros.
Oh, yes. Durer's rhino.
It's such an incredible historical anchor that the author uses. Albrecht Dürer was this Renaissance artist from the early 1500s, and he made this very famous woodcut print of a rhinoceros. Now, Dürer lived in Germany. He had never seen a rhino.
Almost no one in Europe had at that point.
Exactly. So he based this massive, intricate woodcut entirely on a brief written description and like a really rudimentary sketch from someone who had seen an Indian rhino in Lisbon.
Which is wild to think about.
Right. And if you look at Dürer's print today, the literal biological details are just wrong. He drew the rhino with what looks like medieval armor plates, complete with actual rivets holding it together, and there's this strange little twisted horn on its back.
So tactically, the execution was deeply flawed compared to, reality.
Yes, but the underlying truth of the piece is what actually matters, because if you stand in front of that print, the pure, undeniable essence of a rhinoceros just radiates from the paper. You feel its weight, you feel its prehistoric armor, its immovable power.
The vibe is correct, even if the rivets aren't.
Exactly. And the argument in the text is that strategy operates the exact same way. For most of us, strategy is this elusive, unseen rhino. We assume it requires, an MBA or some elite pedigree.
So we just avoid it entirely.
We do. But once you stare at it long enough to actually grasp its essence, all that intimidating armor falls away. and your next steps become incredibly clear. You can't unsee it.
And the consequence of finally seeing that essence is you realize strategy isn't a rigid map. I mean, a map implies that the terrain is known, right? That it's static and entirely predictable.
Like, take 3 steps left and 4 steps right, and you'll find the treasure.
Right. A map guarantees an outcome if the world doesn't change.
Yeah.
But we operate in complex, constantly adapting environments. So strategy is actually a compass. It tells you which direction is true north.
Oh, I love that distinction, because if a boulder rolls into your path, a map is suddenly completely useless.
Right, you're just stuck staring at a line on a page. But a compass allows you to navigate around that obstacle and still recalibrate your heading.
I think the first massive obstacle we really have to clear to actually use that compass is the vocabulary itself. People use strategy and tactics as if they are exact synonyms.
Oh, all the time.
You hear things like, my strategy is to post on social media twice a day.
Yeah, no, that's definitely not a strategy.
Right. The definition that really crystallized this in the source material is deeply organic. It says strategy is the soil, the seed, and the gardener working together over time. It is the hard work of choosing what to do today to make tomorrow better.
And the distinction there really lies in the temporal horizon, and the depth of commitment. Tactics are how we win the immediate moment. They're short-term,
Highly flexible,
very disposable, and often kind of hidden. Like if you're playing tennis, a tactic is noticing your opponent has a weak backhand and choosing to serve to that side on game point.
Okay, that makes sense.
But strategy is your entire philosophy of the game. It's the long-term conditioning, the choice of which tournaments you even entered in the first place, the psychological resilience you've built up over years.
So a tactic is just the very next thing you do.
Exactly. A strategy is the alignment of all those sequential nexts, pointing toward a specific overarching horizon.
And the sources back this up with a really brilliant historical case study. It's 1968, the Sunday Times Golden Globe race.
Such a crazy story.
It is. The challenge is almost unfathomable. It was to be the first person to single-handedly sail around the globe, nonstop.
And just to put that in perspective for the listener, at that time in history, more people had been in outer space than had sailed solo around the world nonstop.
Wait, really? That's insane.
Yeah, it was an absolutely bleeding-edge endeavor.
Right. So you have these incredibly brave, perhaps slightly unhinged sailors preparing for this race. And long before they even reach the dock, they're making these strategic decisions that will literally determine who survives and who wins.
Before they even touch the water.
Yes. The text highlights this one sailor, Robin Knox Johnston. He has to decide what kind of boat to take. Now, does he take a steel-hulled boat? Because theoretically, a steel boat is incredibly strong, right? It's unlikely to break.
But if a steel hull does break in the middle of the Southern Ocean, you cannot fix it. You don't have a welding shop on board.
Exactly. Or does he take a traditional wooden boat, which is slower, it's heavier, it will absolutely leak, and it's going to require constant, grueling maintenance?
And Knox Johnston chose a 32-foot wooden ketch named Suhaili.
He went with the leaky wood boat.
He did. And he chose it because his overarching strategy, his core philosophy for this entire endeavor was absolute self-reliance. He knew things were going to break. The Southern Ocean is a fundamentally chaotic system.
So a steel boat is basically a tactic hoping to avoid the chaos.
Precisely. A steel boat is hoping the ocean is nice to you. A wooden boat, paired with a sailor who actually knows how to rebuild it from the inside out while at sea, is a strategy designed to absorb the chaos.
And the wild part is, he won. He was the only person to even finish the race.
Yeah, the rest of them either sank, quit, or worse.
And Knox Johnston, I mean, his radio broke, his sails tore, his water tanks got polluted. If you look at it strictly tactically, his voyage was an absolute disaster.
It's a total mess, tactically.
But because his strategy was sound, because he had optimized for repairability and resilience rather than just pure speed or theoretical indestructibility, his tactics only had to be marginal good enough to keep the boat moving.
And that perfectly illustrates the central rule here. You cannot tactic your way out of a bad strategy.
Wow.
If you're in a leaking steel boat in a hurricane, rowing harder doesn't save you. You're just doing the wrong thing with more enthusiasm.
Okay, I have to jump in here and play the absolute skeptic. Because that is a beautiful romantic story. But I'm thinking about you, the listener, who is maybe commuting right now or sitting at a desk.
Right.
The modern economic reality does not care about your philosophy of self-reliance. Modern life relentlessly demands tactics. The entire culture of work is built on, Growth hacks, inbox zero, daily stand-up meetings, putting out fires on Slack, hitting quarterly KPIs.
Oh, the tactical treadmill is very real.
So if someone's boss or their investors, or frankly simply the algorithm they depend on to make a living, is just screaming for immediate tactical output, how are they supposed to zoom out and be the gardener tending the soil? Doesn't strategy just become this luxury for people who already have leverage?
That is the defining tension of the modern knowledge worker. It really is. The system you're operating within is aggressively trying to force you into a purely tactical mindset because tactical output is easily measurable.
It's quantifiable.
Exactly. When you check a box, when you respond to an email or ship a minor feature, the system can quantify it, and your brain gets a nice little hit of dopamine.
It feels productive.
It feels incredibly productive. But the trap is that doing our jobs, which is largely following a checklist and securing plausible deniability if things go wrong, is not the same as doing our work.
Let's repeat that. The job is the checklist. The work is the actual change you are trying to effect in the world.
Yes. And if you succumb entirely to the tactical demands of the job, you surrender your agency. You basically become the rowing machine on the sinking steel boat.
Just burning energy.
Right. To do the work, you have to force a pause. You have to literally stop frantically asking, what should I do next? And begin asking these strategic filtering questions. Who am I trying to become? Who specifically am I trying to serve? And what change am I trying to make in them?
And if your tactics aren't serving the answers to those specific questions,
Then you aren't being productive, you're just being busy.
wow. Okay, so if strategy is the compass that guides us out of mere busyness, we really need to understand the terrain we are navigating. And the text breaks this down into 4 underlying threads that are woven into every single scenario we face.
Time, games, empathy, and systems.
Right. So let's pull the first thread, time. There is this line in the text that sounds almost like a Zen koan. It says, time is simply nature's way of making sure everything doesn't happen at once.
It's a great line.
It sounds slightly flippant, but the implications for how we plan are actually huge.
Well, because time is the literal fuel of strategy.
Yeah.
I mean, if everything happens instantaneously, there is no strategy, right? There is only instinct and reaction.
Because there's no gap.
Exactly. Strategy requires a gap between the choice you make and the outcome you get. But the underlying biological challenge is that human beings are profoundly bad at perceiving time accurately.
We suffer from hyperbolic discounting.
Precisely. From an evolutionary psychology standpoint, our brains were forged in environments where the future was highly uncertain.
Like out on the savannah.
Yeah. If you found calories, you consumed them immediately. A rustle in the bushes required an immediate tactical adrenaline response.
You didn't sit down and draft a 5-year plan for the bush.
No, because planning for 20 years in the future was calorically expensive and basically evolutionarily useless when the average life expectancy was incredibly short. We are hardwired to prioritize the immediate present.
Which explains so much about modern behavior.
It does. It's why we inherently struggle to grasp slow compound changes, whether that's the mechanics of Darwinian evolution, the reality of climate change, or even just the mathematics of compound interest in a retirement account. We just can't see the time.
And the source material grounds this with a deeply personal anecdote about Lisa Nichols. It says she's sitting with her 87-year-old grandmother, and her grandmother looks at her and says, "Lisa, when I was your age, I couldn't be who you are."
Yeah.
And obviously there's a profound layer there regarding civil rights, systemic oppression, generational progress. But the strategic layer is that our experience of time and our placement within it fundamentally constrains or expands our choices.
It reveals the elasticity of the concept of now.
What do you mean by that?
Well, a reactive person lives in a microscopic now, like just today, just this hour. A strategic person actively stretches their definition of now. They expand it backward to understand the historical context and the sunk costs that shape their present reality.
So they look at how the board was set up before they got there.
Exactly. And more importantly, they expand it forward.
Yeah.
When you operate strategically, you aren't just letting tomorrow happen to you. You are operating with a realization that the future is an empty space that is actively counting on you to construct it. Time isn't this current sweeping you away. It is the raw material you use to build.
I love that. Time is raw material. Which brings us to the second thread, which is where we interact with everyone else. Games. And just to be clear for the listener, we aren't talking about chess or Monopoly here. We are talking about game theory in the broadest sense.
Right. A game, in this context, exists whenever there are multiple players, a scarcity of resources, and different possible outcomes. The text uses this really brilliant ecological analogy. A forest. A forest is a game.
Like trees competing for sunlight?
Yes, they are all playing a game that is constrained by the physics of light and soil. Only one tree can grow to be the absolute tallest in a specific patch, capturing the maximum amount of light. But their individual strategies, whether they grow fast and brittle or slow and dense, whether they drop their leaves in winter or keep them, these are all adaptations to the presence of the other players. The shade cast by the tallest tree becomes the defining constraint for the sapling below it.
And humans play games constantly. Status games, economic games, social games. I'm actually thinking of James Carson's framework of finite versus infinite games here.
Oh, that maps perfectly onto this.
Right, like a finite game has known players, fixed rules, and an agreed-upon endpoint, like a football game. You play a finite game to win. But an infinite game has known and unknown players, the rules change, and the objective is simply to keep playing.
Like business, or marriage, or culture.
Exactly. And if you bring a finite tactical mindset like I must defeat my opponent today into an infinite strategic game, you usually end up destroying the game itself.
That is a crucial distinction. In business, if your only strategy is the finite game of bankrupting your competitor this quarter, you might utilize tactics that ultimately destroy your own reputation or your supply chain.
You win the quarter, but you lose the company.
Right. You render yourself unable to play the infinite game of long-term survival.
This flows directly into the third thread, which I think is where most people's strategies violently derail: empathy. Now, I have to push back a bit on how this word is normally used.
Go for it.
Because in corporate speak, empathy usually just means building a user persona so you can manipulate a customer into buying your software.
Yes.
Or it means affective empathy, feeling sad when someone else is sad. But the text is demanding something much harder than either of those.
The text is demanding cognitive empathy, which is not sympathy. It is the radical, often deeply uncomfortable acceptance of a completely different reality.
The core mantra of strategic empathy in the text is so good. It's, I don't know what you know. I don't see what you see. I don't want what you want. I don't believe what you believe, and that is okay.
It's so hard to actually internalize that.
Why is that so hard for us? Because intellectually, if you hear that, it sounds obvious. But in practice, we suffer from what psychologists call the false consensus effect.
We do. We subconsciously assume that everyone else basically processes information the exact same way we do.
Right. We think, if I just show my boss this spreadsheet, if I just present the data clearly, they will obviously agree with my conclusion because my conclusion is rational.
And when they don't agree, our immediate tactical reaction is to assume they are stupid, stubborn, or just malicious.
They just don't get it.
Exactly.
Huh.
But strategic empathy forces you to step back and realize that they are acting perfectly rationally based on their worldview, their fears, and their desires.
Mm-hmm.
People generally do not want what you want.
What do they want?
What they usually want is some form of status, security, or affiliation within their own tribe.
So the strategic application here is that you cannot force your seeds into frozen ground and yell at the soil for not growing a tomato.
That's a perfect way to put it. You cannot build a strategy that requires everyone else to spontaneously adopt your worldview.
So what's the alternative?
The successful strategy requires you to design a path that helps the other players get what they want, which coincidentally advances the change you are trying to make. You have to solve their problem to solve your problem.
Man, that requires so much ego removal.
It really does.
Which brings us to the fourth and perhaps most imposing thread: systems. Empathy dictates how we treat the players, but systems dictate the physics of the board we are playing on. Systems emerge anytime we work together, and they have an astonishing lifespan.
They outlive us all.
They do. There's a concept in the source material from Stuart Brand that provides the perfect mental model for this. Brand talks about looking at a map of downtown Boston from the year 1924 and overlaying it on a map of Boston from today.
It perfectly illustrates this concept of shearing layers, how different parts of a system change at totally different speeds.
Right, because if you look at that century-old map, almost every single building has changed. Houses were torn down, storefronts were replaced by skyscrapers, entire blocks were gentrified.
The nodes of the system are completely modular. They get swapped out constantly.
Yes, but the roads, the connections between those nodes, they are virtually identical. The chaotic, winding, illogical cow paths of 1924 Boston are the exact same chaotic, winding streets that cause traffic jams today.
And you see this everywhere.
It makes me think of the QWERTY keyboard on our laptops and phones. It was literally designed in the 1870s for mechanical typewriters.
To slow typists down, right? So the
Yeah.
metal arms wouldn't jam together.
Exactly. And we have infinitely better, faster keyboard layouts available today, like Dvorak. But the QWERTY layout is a road. It is the underlying infrastructure of how billions of people learn to type. You can change the building, swapping a heavy mechanical typewriter for an iPhone glass screen, but you cannot easily reroute the road of global muscle memory.
The strategic takeaway there is profound. When you are trying to affect change, whether in your own life, your company, or society, it is infinitely easier to change a building than it is to reroute a road. We waste vast amounts of energy trying to change the roads.
Oh, that hits close to home. In a corporate setting, the buildings are what, the specific software tools we use or the org chart?
Yes, or even the individuals in a department. We swap those out all the time and wonder why the culture doesn't improve.
We got a new VP, everything will be different now.
But it never is.
Yeah.
Because the roads are the incentive structures, the unwritten cultural norms, the ways status is actually awarded or punished. Those roadways fight aggressively to remain exactly as they are.
So if your strategy relies on spontaneously rerouting a 100-year-old road,
You are going to fail.
yeah.
You have to understand the existing traffic patterns and either use them to your advantage, or you need to prepare for a multi-decade project to build a bypass.
Which leads us to a concept that I found honestly genuinely unsettling.
Uh-oh. What was it?
Well, we look at broken roads, toxic workplaces, endless bureaucratic healthcare systems, algorithmic polarization on social media, and we say, this system is broken, we need to fix it. But the text argues that the system is rarely broken. In fact, it is operating at peak efficiency. The core thesis here is, the system wants what it wants.
It's a tough pill to swallow. Because we harbor this deeply ingrained cultural myth of limitless individual agency. We believe that if we just speak truth to power, or if we just work hard enough, systems will naturally bend toward logic and justice.
But they don't.
No, they don't. Because systems possess a property called autopoiesis. It's a fancy biological term, but it basically means they are capable of reproducing and maintaining themselves. Systems act as if they have a conscious Darwinian desire to survive.
The author actually uses literal biology to explain this. He references that old evolutionary joke. A chicken is merely an egg's way of making another egg.
It's a brilliant distillation of Richard Dawkins' selfish gene theory.
Right. The chicken walks around pecking at grain, assuming it is the main character of its own story.
Living its best life.
Exactly. But from the perspective of the genetic system, the chicken is nothing more than a temporary biological vehicle constructed solely to ensure the DNA is passed to the next egg.
The virus analogy makes this even clearer, I think.
Walk us through that.
Look at the influenza virus. A virus does not want to kill its host. A dead host is a dead end. It cannot spread the virus. What the flu virus has evolved to do, what the system requires to survive, is to make you just sick enough that your immune system triggers a cough or a sneeze.
So it can travel.
Yes.
Oh.
Propelling the viral particles out of your respiratory tract and onto the person next to you on the subway. Viruses that are too lethal burn out. Viruses that don't cause a sneeze fail to transmit. The system optimizes for its own propagation.
Okay, let's map that mechanism onto human cultural systems because it is terrifyingly accurate. The text points to the wedding industry.
A perfect example. A modern bride and groom think they are the absolute center of the universe on their wedding day.
It's their special day.
Right. But from the perspective of the wedding industrial complex, a bride is just the system's way of ensuring the venue, the caterer, and the florist are booked for the next generation. The entire cultural architecture of the perfect day is designed to make all the unmarried guests desire the exact same expensive rituals.
They are the Smees.
They're the sneeze.
Wow. And the most urgent modern application of this, obviously, is social media. We constantly bemoan the fact that social media creates anxiety, polarization, exhaustion. We demand the tech companies fix their algorithms.
But the algorithm isn't broken.
No.
I don't know.
The algorithm is a system designed with one singular objective, harvesting human attention to sell advertisements.
And how do you harvest attention? You exploit the deepest psychological vulnerabilities of the human animal. The system figured out that humans are tribal creatures with an insatiable evolutionary need for status, affiliation, and outrage at perceived threats.
So the algorithm doesn't want you to be happy.
Not at all. And it doesn't want you to be so depressed that you throw your phone in the river either. It wants you in a perpetual state of agitated engagement.
But it wants you to sneeze your outrage onto your followers so the emotional virus spreads.
Precisely. We must view systems through the lens of their outputs, not their stated intentions. There's a famous systems theory maxim. The purpose of a system is what it does.
The purpose of a system is what it does. That's so profound.
If a corporate culture consistently produces burnout, then the actual purpose of that system, regardless of the wellness posters in the break room, is to extract maximum labor through burnout.
This feels incredibly deterministic, though. Like, if the systems are these massive autopoietic leviathans just using us as hosts, are we just doomed to be chickens laying eggs? Because this is where the societal pressure of should comes in.
Oh, the tyranny of should.
Yeah. Society tells you that you should go into debt for this degree, you should buy this specific size house, you should work yourself to the bone. It feels like the system demanding compliance.
The tyranny of should is absolutely the system's defense mechanism. But this is exactly where strategy rescues us from determinism. The text is very clear here. You are not powerless.
Okay.
Your power might not be infinite. You cannot simply wish a trillion-dollar algorithm out of existence, but your power is not zero. Agency exists, but it requires articulation.
So what's the choice we have to make?
You have to consciously decide. Are you going to articulate a strategy to use the system, or are you going to passively default to letting the system use you?
It's the matrix pill choice. Once you see the systems, you can't just float in them blindly anymore. So let's talk about the mechanics of actual change. If we choose to exercise our agency, if we step up to do the work rather than just the job, we're inevitably going to create friction.
Always.
And the text calls this tension. And humans are deeply allergic to tension.
We are conditioned to view tension as an error state. If there is tension in a meeting or tension in a relationship, we assume we have done something wrong and rush to smooth it over.
But the author uses physics to reframe this. You cannot launch a rubber band across a room without pulling it backward. That kinetic potential is tension.
Right.
Or look at a water spider. It literally walks on water because of surface tension. If you remove the tension, the spider drowns. Tension isn't the enemy of progress. Tension is the engine of progress.
Because whenever you introduce a new idea, a new product, or a new cultural norm, you are asking people to change. And change requires abandoning the safety of the known for the uncertainty of the unknown.
Which is scary.
It creates immediate psychological tension for the people you're trying to serve. They ask themselves, if I adopt this new software, will I look incompetent? If I support this new initiative, what will my peers think? Is it safe?
So a successful strategy doesn't try to eliminate that tension.
No, a successful strategy embraces the tension and builds a bridge across it.
And building that bridge brings us to one of the most critical frameworks in the text, the chasm. This is based on Jeff Moore's legendary work on technology adoption life cycles.
The classic bell curve.
Right. We all know the standard bell curve. On the far left, you have the innovators and early adopters. These are the people who camp outside the Apple store. In the massive middle, you have the early and late majority, the pragmatists who just want things to work.
But between the early adopters and the mainstream majority, there is a gaping canyon, the chasm.
Why does that chasm exist?
It exists because those two groups have entirely contradictory psychologies. The early adopters buy things because they are new and slightly dangerous. The early majority buys things because they are proven, safe, and everyone else is already using them.
They want social proof. The pragmatist won't buy it until their neighbor buys it, but the neighbor won't buy it until the pragmatist buys it.
It's a catch-22. And the chasm is where good ideas and noble strategies go to die. The text makes a fascinating observation about who falls into the chasm most frequently.
Who is it?
Absolutists, extremists, and purists.
Interesting. People with a completely uncompromising vision for how the world should be.
Yes. They are fueled by a righteous desire for immediate systemic change. They march up to the edge of the chasm and demand that the massive pragmatic mainstream instantly leap across the void to adopt their pure vision.
But remember, the system wants what it wants, and the mainstream system values stability.
Exactly. If you demand immediate frictionless adoption without providing a bridge, the system simply ignores you. A viable strategy requires the humility to compromise on your tactics, to build a slow, dirty, imperfect bridge in order to eventually achieve your overarching vision.
There is a spectacular real-time example of falling into the chasm in the source notes. The humane AI pin.
Oh man, what a case study.
Right. This was a wearable device powered by AI that was supposed to liberate us from our smartphone screens.
Conceptually, a noble vision. We all want to look at our phones less.
Right. And what did the company do? They generated maximum hype. They had high-end fashion shows, glossy videos, massive celebrity endorsements. They rode a tidal wave of what the text calls inflated expectations.
They tried to leapfrog the early adopters entirely.
Yes, they tried to drop this radical new paradigm straight into the laps of the mainstream majority.
And the mechanical reason it failed is that they didn't build any scaffolding.
Explain scaffolding in this context.
Scaffolding is the structural support that helps a user transition from their current behavior to your new behavior safely.
Okay.
The Humane AI pin required people to stop using screens, learn a completely new laser projection interface on their hand, and trust a voice assistant to do literally everything. That is a massive behavioral leap.
Without any training wheels.
Exactly. When the product shipped and had inevitable version 1 bugs, there was no structural support. The mainstream users panicked, the tech reviewers tore it apart, and the momentum violently collapsed. They treated all users as if they had the same risk tolerance.
So how do you actually cross the chasm without plummeting to your death? The text offers a solution that feels completely counterintuitive in our age of viral scale. It's called the strategy of the smallest viable audience.
Because the instinct is always to make your idea appeal to everyone, right?
Yeah, you want a huge market.
But seeking a unanimous standing ovation guarantees you will water down your idea until it is completely unremarkable. The smallest viable audience requires you to hyper-focus on a tiny, incredibly specific cohort of early adopters, the pioneers.
And this is where the psychology gets fascinating, because the pioneers don't actually want a flawless, frictionless experience.
No, friction is actually a feature for them.
Wait, really? Why?
Because overcoming friction grants them status. Think about the first people who bought Tesla Roadsters, or the people who build their own custom mechanical keyboards from scratch.
It's difficult.
It is difficult. They want it to be a little difficult, a little risky, because when they figure it out, they get to demonstrate their elite competence to their peers. They enjoy the tension.
So your strategy is to give those specific pioneers the raw materials, let them do the heavy lifting of figuring out the edge cases, let them feel smart, and then they become the bridge.
Yes. They translate the messy new reality into safe, practical use cases for the pragmatic majority.
Wow. So you cross the chasm not through massive marketing hype, but at the slow, deliberate speed of trust, passed from person to person.
Exactly. But to execute this, you must accept the profound tension of intentionally ignoring the people who aren't ready yet. When someone from the mainstream says, "I don't get your idea, it's stupid," your strategic response must be, "You're right, it's not for you yet."
That requires so much discipline. It requires making incredibly hard choices. Which brings us to the final section of our deep dive. The friction between the choices we actually make and the defaults we fall into. We touched on this earlier, but we need to sharply define the difference between your job and your work.
This is where strategy becomes deeply, deeply personal. The system, whether that's your employer, your industry, your school, assigns you a job. The primary function of a job is to provide a checklist of tasks.
And the psychological benefit of the checklist is deniability.
Always deniability.
Like, hey, I did what you asked. I checked the boxes. It's not my fault the company went bankrupt.
Precisely. It solves the principal-agent problem by limiting the agent's liability. But your work is entirely different. Your work is the series of hard, unscripted choices you make to bring about the change you care about.
And doing the work requires you to operate without deniability.
You have to say, "I am doing this, and I own the outcome."
And because humans hate tension and fear failure, we usually opt out of doing the work. We engage in what the text brilliantly calls passive non-decision.
Passive non-decisions. We all do this. A passive non-decision is when you allow the system's gravity to make the choice for you while convincing yourself you are being strategic.
The examples in the text are painful because they are so common. It talks about Samsung. For decades, Samsung sent massive teams of executives to the Consumer Electronics Show in Las Vegas.
CES. Huge event.
Right. They spend millions of dollars on sprawling booths. If you ask them why, they'd probably give you some corporate speak about brand visibility. But the reality
is they made TVs. Everyone else who made TVs went to CES, so they went to CES.
Exactly. It wasn't a calculated strategic offensive. It was a passive submission to industry norms. Or take corporate lawyers. When they incorporate a new business, they almost always register it in Delaware.
Right, the Delaware C Corp.
They don't do a multivariable analysis of tax codes for every single client. They do it because that's how it's always done.
The danger of the passive non-decision is that it perfectly reinforces the existing roads of the system. And the psychological trap that locks us into these non-decisions is our complete inability to process sunk costs.
Some costs are the graveyard of good strategy.
They really are. A sunk cost is time, money, or effort that has already been spent and cannot be recovered. Rationally, economists tell us that sunk costs should have absolutely zero bearing on future decisions.
Like if you spend $50 on a movie ticket and the first hour of the movie is terrible, you should leave.
Right, you've lost the $50 either way. Staying only costs you your time.
But no one leaves the theater.
No one leaves. Because we are not rational. We are emotional creatures driven by loss aversion and ego protection. The text points out that humans rarely suffer from believer's remorse.
What does that mean?
When a strategy is clearly failing, admitting defeat requires us to process cognitive dissonance. It requires us to admit that our past self was wrong, which threatens our current identity.
So instead of changing course, we double down.
We throw good money after bad. We defend the failing system to protect our ego.
A strategic framework bypasses the ego entirely. It forces you to look at the board as it exists today, completely ignorant of how you got there, and ask, given these current resources, what is the best move for tomorrow?
And that leads to the final, incredibly practical manifestation of these passive non-decisions: how we organize our time together. The text draws a lethal distinction between meetings and conversations.
Oh boy. Every listener who works in an office is about to feel personally attacked.
As they should, because a conversation is an interaction, either synchronous or asynchronous, that generates insight, shares wisdom, and actively advances the work.
But a meeting.
The source material defines a meeting as a real-time memo that wastes everyone's time and leaves no commonly accepted record behind.
It's the ultimate passive non-decision. We don't know what to do, the tension is high, so let's get 8 people in a room for an hour to spread the deniability around.
That is exactly the mechanism. Meetings are a cultural defense mechanism. They simulate the feeling of productivity while actively avoiding the tension of hard choices.
So what is the strategic alternative?
The alternative is leveraging the superpower of asynchronicity. Writing a memo forces clarity of thought. It codifies the argument.
And allowing people to read it and respond asynchronously on their own time respects their cognitive load.
It generates far better analysis than demanding immediate, performative reactions in a conference room. Organizations that struggle with strategy invariably drown in real-time meetings.
So if we pull all of this together, and we have covered a massive expanse of territory here, we have to look at the synthesis. We've established that strategy is a compass, not a map.
Right.
We have to master the physics of time, understand the finite and infinite games we are playing, deploy radical cognitive empathy, and recognize the autopoietic resilience of the systems we are embedded in.
It's a lot.
It is a lot. We have to embrace the tension of crossing the chasm by focusing on the smallest viable audience, and we must ruthlessly abandon sunk costs and passive non-decisions.
And when you lay all those pieces out, the overarching synthesis is actually incredibly liberating. Strategy is not a corporate straitjacket meant to optimize your economic output. Strategy is the architecture of your agency. It is the partner of freedom.
That is the perfect counter-narrative to the culture we live in. We exist in a society obsessed with quantified measurement. The systems desperately want us to measure the value of our lives by our productivity metrics, our follower counts, the square footage of our homes, or the title on our LinkedIn profiles.
It is a deterministic dead end.
It really is. Strategic thinking provides the escape velocity, and it starts with the most disruptive question you can ask a system. What is this for?
What is this for? Changes everything. I mean, look, some of our hours must be traded to meet systemic demands. We all have to pay the rent.
Of course.
But your entire life does not have to be a blind, tactical pursuit of the system's metrics. The core insight of Chapter 2 is that a successful strategy is simply a blueprint. But it is not a blueprint for a corporation.
What is it blueprint for?
It is a blueprint designed to align the change you seek to make in the world with the life you actually intend to live.
It is the philosophy of becoming. It requires seeing the hidden rhinos, building the scaffolding for others, and enduring the tension that change requires. It is incredibly hard work.
But if you want to be more than just a chicken laying eggs for a system that doesn't even know your name, it is the only work that matters.
I want to leave you, the listener, with this. Tomorrow is going to arrive, whether you have a compass in your hand or not. The current of time does not stop. So the very next time you find yourself invited to a real-time meeting that should have been a written conversation,
Or the next time you feel the gravitational pull of a sunk cost.
or the next time you are tempted to water down your vision just to please the masses, Stop and look at the roads you are traveling. Ask yourself, are you just driving the speed limit on a road built a century ago? Or are you ready to embrace the tension and build something new?
And remember, the tension you are avoiding is usually the exact energy you need to move forward.
There is so much more to unpack about how these hidden systems shape our behavior, and we are going to dive into the specific mechanics of systemic change in our next session. Until then, keep asking yourself, when the person you could have been meets the person you are becoming, what kind of introduction is that going to be? The systems running our lives, right? From how we get our morning coffee to how we structure our entire careers, they are completely invisible.
Yeah, completely unseen.
But they dictate almost every single choice we make. And if you've ever felt just totally exhausted trying to change things in your life, or your community or your business.
Right. And you just keep failing.
Exactly. You keep failing. I really want you to hear this today. It is not because you lacked willpower.
No, not at all.
It's because you were fighting an invisible law of physics. You were literally trying to fight gravity.
Which is such a crucial shift in perspective. I mean, we tend to internalize failure so deep.
Oh, totally. We blame ourselves.
Right. We think, I didn't hustle hard enough, or I just wasn't persuasive enough in that meeting. But in reality, we are operating within these massive, entrenched frameworks.
Massive frameworks.
Yeah, frameworks that are explicitly designed to resist our individual efforts to change them. Like, the system just does not care about your hustle.
The system doesn't care about your hustle. That is the core of what we are unpacking in today's deep dive. We are exploring Seth Godin's material, specifically his chapter on the persistence of systems.
It's such a dense, fascinating chapter.
It really is.
Yeah.
And by the time we wrap up this conversation, you will have a clear framework for why things stay the same even when everyone involved seemingly wants them to change.
Yeah, that paradox of everyone wanting change but nothing moving.
Exactly. We are going to look at how seeing these invisible roads is the ultimate shortcut for any entrepreneur, leader, or really just any curious learner who wants to make an actual impact.
And to do that, it requires a shift, from working in the system to working on the system.
On the system, I like that.
But to work on it, you have to be able to see it first.
Yeah.
And a system isn't just a bureaucracy or a piece of software.
Right, it's not just code.
No, it is any place where human effort is coordinated to fill a need, to, adjudicate our irrationality, and to create consistency.
Basically, a mechanism that builds a bridge between today and tomorrow.
Exactly.
But I feel like the word system can sound incredibly dry. Like we're talking about a server room or a spreadsheet.
It does have that clinical vibe. Yeah.
But the sources point out that we live in a literal solar system. And the solar system isn't managed by a CEO.
Right. The sun doesn't have a mission statement.
No mission statement. But the planets, the moons, the asteroids, they are all held together relentlessly by gravity. And human systems have an unseen gravity of their own.
They do. And the gravity in human systems, it comes from culture, shared expectations, and feedback loops.
Feedback loops.
Yeah, it's what keeps the planets of our daily lives in orbit, essentially. To make this really concrete, think about the difference between the built environment and the invisible rules that govern it.
Okay, break that down for me.
Well, Stuart Brand illustrates this beautifully in the text. He suggests taking a map of Boston from 1924.
Okay, 100 years ago.
Right, and you lay a map of Boston from 2024 right on top of it.
100-year difference in a major metropolitan area. You'd think everything would be completely unrecognizable.
And in one sense, it is. Because almost every single building from 1924 has been changed, renovated, or just completely demolished and replaced.
The buildings are gone.
Yeah, those are the nodes in the system. The
Yeah.
buildings and the people inside them, they get swapped out constantly. But the major roadways,
Let me guess, they're the same.
virtually identical. The connections between those nodes haven't moved.
The actual paths people take stay exactly the same. But why is that? I mean, why do we tear down massive skyscrapers, but we leave the winding cobblestone-era street layout perfectly intact?
Because it is infinitely easier to tear down a building and put up a new one than it is to reroute a major roadway.
Oh, wow. Yeah, I guess that makes sense.
I mean, think about it. To change a road, you have to deal with property lines, underground utilities, zoning laws.
The disruption to traffic.
Exactly. The traffic flow disruption and just the deeply ingrained habits of hundreds of thousands of commuters.
Right. Everyone expects the road to be there.
So the systems fight to keep those roads, those conventions, exactly as they are, because we all rely on them to know how to navigate. The friction involved in changing the connection is exponentially higher than changing the node.
So think about your own life or your workplace as you listen to this. How often are you trying to change a building,
You feel
right?
like firing an employee.
Firing an employee, changing a vendor, or trying a new software tool. You're changing the building when the actual problem is the road.
Yes. The road is the unwritten rule of how your company communicates, or how your industry rewards status.
And if you just keep changing the buildings, the traffic still flows exactly the same way. The bad communication habits just reroute into the new software tool.
Or they infect the new employee. You hire someone great, but the system corrupts them.
Right.
You have to understand that real life isn't Lego.
I love that analogy. Real life isn't Lego.
It really isn't. You can take a Lego castle apart and put it back together perfectly. That's a simple built system.
Right. If a brick is blue and you want a red one, you just swap it.
Exactly. Nothing else in the castle cares if the brick is red or blue. But human systems are complex. The sources draw a distinction here, using the Tacoma Narrows Bridge collapse.
Oh, the famous black and white video with the twisting bridge. I've seen that footage so many times, but I don't fully grasp the mechanics of why it happened. It was a brand new bridge, wasn't it?
It was a brand new bridge, and the engineers built that bridge exactly to plan. It was an impressive feat of deterministic engineering.
So it was a built system.
A built system, yes, but they treated it like Lego. What they failed to account for was that once you place a built system into the natural world, it becomes a complex system.
Because it's interacting with the environment.
Exactly. It's subject to forces completely outside the
Get that.
blueprint. They didn't account for harmonic resonance.
Okay, break that down for me. What is harmonic resonance in this context?
So when wind blows across a solid structure, it creates vortices, little swirling eddies of air.
Little swirls of air, got it.
And those vortices create alternating forces that push and pull on the bridge. Now, normally, a bridge is stiff enough to resist this.
Right, bridges don't usually flap in the wind.
Exactly. But the Tacoma Narrows Bridge had a specific natural frequency. And when the frequency of those wind vortices matched the bridge's natural frequency, it started to sway.
So the wind essentially found the bridge's rhythm.
Yes. And here is where the feedback loop kicks in. As the bridge swayed, that physical movement actually changed the aerodynamic profile of the bridge.
Oh, no. So it caught more wind?
Yes, it captured more wind energy, which made it sway harder, which captured even more wind. It just kept feeding on itself.
Until it collapsed.
It twisted violently until the steel and concrete literally tore themselves to pieces. The engineers built a static node, but they totally ignored the dynamic connections.
I can see the perfect parallel to a corporate bureaucracy here. You can draw a perfect organizational chart on a whiteboard.
Oh, easily.
You have the CEO, the VP, the managers. It looks completely rational, just like a blueprint for a bridge.
But it's not Lego.
Right, because once you populate that chart with human beings who have egos, fears, mortgages to pay, and status anxieties, it instantly becomes a complex system.
Yes, exactly.
So you institute a new company policy, and let's call that the wind.
That is a perfect mapping. The policy is the wind.
So the HR department thinks the policy will just pass over the structure harmlessly. But they didn't account for the harmonic resonance of human gossip and insecurity.
Oh, human gossip is a powerful wind.
Right. The policy creates a little bit of anxiety. That anxiety hits the natural frequency of a stressed-out middle management team.
And they start acting defensively.
Hoarding information, sending passive-aggressive emails, and that behavioral sway captures more anxiety from the junior employees.
Yeah.
And suddenly the entire department is tearing itself apart over a seemingly minor policy change.
Because it acts in ways the HR department could never have predicted.
Yeah.
They were managing a built system, not a complex one.
They were managing Lego bricks.
Exactly. Complex systems are probabilistic. They are not deterministic. You can't just press a button and guarantee an output.
Which, if you think about it, flies directly in the face of a massive cultural myth we live with today.
Oh, absolutely.
We are constantly sold this idea of unlimited individual power. The myth of the lone genius.
The hustle culture mandate.
Yes, hustle culture. It says if you just grind hard enough, if you optimize your morning routine and take your ice baths, you can bend the universe to your will.
You can just disrupt any industry you want.
Right, the magical disruptor.
It's a very seductive myth because it puts us entirely in control of our destiny, which feels good.
Of course it does.
But as Godin notes, our power actually lies somewhere between infinity and zero. We aren't powerless cogs, but we also can't command a complex system to just follow our wishes.
Systems have incredible resilience.
They do. They have deep-seated reasons for persisting. And one of the strongest reasons is sunk costs.
Sunk costs, meaning what they've already invested.
Right. If an industry has invested billions of dollars and decades of training into a certain way of doing things, they will fight fiercely to protect that investment.
I hear that, but a common counterargument you always hear in business circles is that we shouldn't try to change the old system at all.
The whole burn it down approach.
Yeah. We are taught to ignore the old guard, build from scratch, and disrupt the status quo completely. Let the legacy companies die while we build a sleek, modern alternative.
I mean, it sounds appealing in theory, but there's a quote from Carl Sagan in the text that dismantles that idea completely.
Oh, what is it?
If you wish to make an apple pie from scratch, you must first invent the universe.
Wow. If you wish to make an apple pie from scratch, you must first invent the universe. Meaning you can't actually start from scratch.
You can't. You are always building with ingredients that already exist, within a context that already exists.
You're dealing with reality.
Right? Human psychology, existing economic realities, physical limitations. And one of the biggest reasons you can't just build a new universe is the necessity of interoperability.
Let's spend some time on interoperability, because this feels like the invisible glue holding the status quo together.
It really is.
In tech terms, I know it means how things talk to each other. Like, no one wants to buy a revolutionary new smartphone if it doesn't support Bluetooth or connect to existing Wi-Fi networks.
Exactly.
But how does this apply outside of technology, like in our day-to-day work?
Well, it applies to almost every profession and social structure. Interoperability is the shared connectors, the languages, the standard procedures that make efficiency possible.
Okay, that makes sense.
The text uses a really detailed example of the dental industry to illustrate this. Imagine a dentist who develops a brilliant idea for a completely new, vastly superior way to practice dentistry.
Like, better for the patient, better for everyone.
Right. Maybe it involves redesigning the physical space, altering how patients are positioned, and completely changing the sequence of care. But they can't just wake up Monday morning and implement it.
Well, the immediate thought is, why not? I mean, they own the practice, they sign the checks, they are the boss.
They are the boss of your node, but they are heavily dependent on the network connections. Let's walk through the friction here. First, they rely on dental hygienists.
Okay.
Hygienists go to school for years to learn a very specific vocabulary. They learn a standardized methodology for cleaning and literally a specific way to hand instruments to the dentist.
Right. It's a very choreographed routine.
Yes. So if our hypothetical dentist changes the procedure, they suddenly have to completely retrain every new hire from the ground up, fighting against years of muscle memory.
And the physical equipment is standardized too, isn't it?
It's highly standardized. The dental chair, the overhead lights, the suction tubes, these are manufactured by massive supply companies.
Companies built around the standard model of dentistry.
Exactly.
Yeah.
If our dentist wants a different setup, they can't just order it out of a catalog. They have to custom build it.
Which has to be prohibitively expensive.
It is. And it means standard repair technicians won't know how to fix it when it breaks.
Oh, right. The guy who fixes the chair is part of the system too.
Yes.
Okay.
And then there is the financial layer, insurance companies.
That might be the highest wall of all.
Oh, for sure. Insurance billing is based on specific, standardized codes for specific procedures.
So if you invent a new holistic treatment protocol that doesn't map perfectly onto those existing billing codes, what happens?
The insurance company simply rejects the claim.
Wow.
The patient has to pay out of pocket, and suddenly the dentist-patient base shrinks drastically.
So the choices have already been made for the dentist by the system's need for interoperability.
Exactly.
The friction of fighting the hygienist schools, the equipment manufacturers, and the insurance boards is so high that it's just easier to practice dentistry the way everyone else does.
And that's why things stay the same. We are deeply entrenched in these professional and social networks.
So what does this mean for someone trying to launch a product or change a company culture?
It means you have to stop fighting the system outright. You can't invent the universe. You must find the leverage points within the existing framework.
You have to figure out how your new idea can interoperate with the old system just enough to gain a foothold.
Yes, you work with the gravity to create a new outcome.
Okay, but if systems are this deeply entrenched and they force us into these specific patterns of behavior, does that mean the system is fundamentally broken if it's producing outcomes we don't like?
This brings us to a concept in the sources that requires dropping a lot of our comforting assumptions.
Yeah, this part blew my mind.
The idea is Systems rarely do what they say they do.
They don't do what they say they do.
Right. The purpose of a system is not its mission statement. The purpose of a system is exactly what it outputs.
That is a difficult pill to swallow. It requires us to separate the marketing from the mechanism, essentially.
It really does.
Yeah.
Because we read a hospital's mission statement about, healing the community and providing compassionate care.
Right. But when we interact with the system, what do we actually see? We see it maximizing billing codes,
Shortening patient visits to 15 minutes.
prioritizing highly profitable elective surgeries over preventative medicine. And we get angry. We say the healthcare system is broken.
But the sources argue it isn't broken.
It's not broken.
No, it is doing exactly what it evolved to do.
Yeah.
It is producing the outputs, revenue, efficiency, and scale that keep it funded and operational. The healthcare system doesn't make health. It makes treatments.
It makes treatments.
Yeah.
The examples in the text are just so stark. Higher education in the U.S. is another one.
Oh, that's a perfect example.
The brochure says the university exists to produce well-informed, enlightened citizens. But the actual output, if you look at where the money and energy flow, is that it produces careers.
Right. It creates cultural networking.
And it sustains a massive administrative bureaucracy. Or think about a typical corporation. It doesn't transform its customers' lives as a primary function. It enriches its executives and shareholders.
We constantly mistake the plaque on the wall in the lobby for the actual machinery running in the basement.
Machinery in the basement, I like that.
And Godin uses a brilliant analogy to help us detach emotionally from this. He compares it to the weather.
I really appreciate that analogy because it removes the sense of personal offense. Like the weather doesn't try to rain on your outdoor wedding.
No, it doesn't have an agenda against you.
It doesn't have a moral stance on whether your picnic gets ruined. It just rains because the atmospheric pressure and moisture levels demand it.
Exactly. Human systems don't have human morals in that way. They don't want what you want. They just execute their logic.
And when we view it through that lens, it explains why genuinely good, well-intentioned people get trapped in toxic systems without changing them.
Let's look at medical students, because they are a group often cited in discussions about systemic persistence.
Right, the idealists.
Yeah, young, empathetic people enter medical school wanting to heal the sick. And the text points out that they often find their training exhausting, sleep-depriving, and profoundly dehumanizing.
They recognize how toxic it is while they are in it.
Totally.
I have friends who went through medical residencies and they universally described it as a form of institutional hazing. Working 30-hour shifts, being humiliated by attending physicians on rounds. They hated it.
So the logical question is, why do the ones who survive that hazing and become powerful doctors turn around and perpetuate that exact same system for the next generation of residents?
Why don't they just fix the schedule when they have the power? Is it just a hazing mentality? Like, I suffered, so you have to suffer too.
I mean, that is part of the psychological rationalization for sure. But the deeper systemic reason is that the system rewired them. It's not a deliberate conspiracy by evil doctors.
It's just the machinery.
Right. By the time that student becomes an attending physician, they are thoroughly integrated into the interoperability of the hospital.
They rely on the hierarchy.
They rely on the cheap labor of residents working 30-hour shifts to keep their own departments profitable and functional. They have traded the failure of fighting the system for the success of traction within it.
Wow. So the system didn't change for them, it changed them to fit the system. They became a node that perfectly supports the existing roads.
And that is the ultimate survival mechanism of a complex system. So when you enter a new workplace, a new market, or a new organization, do not judge it by the inspirational quotes in the onboarding manual.
Right. Don't look at the plaque on the wall.
Judge it by its actual day-to-day outputs. Observe who gets promoted. Observe what behaviors are tolerated when money is on the line.
So if you want to engage with the system and actually shift it, you have to assume it wants to persist above all else.
Yes, persistence is its prime directive.
If you pitch a new idea to a board of directors, don't pitch it based on how it fulfills the lofty mission statement. Pitch it based on how it provides reassurance to the system.
Reassurance, yes.
And how it helps the people in power maintain their status while slightly altering the trajectory.
Reassurance is literally the currency you use to buy a system's cooperation. The system wants what it wants, and mostly it wants to avoid the fear of unpredictable change.
But of course, change does happen. It happens through tension.
Right. Without tension, the system just defaults to the status quo forever.
Godin notes that change requires tension, but it also creates feedback loops. And I want to spend some time digging into the mechanics of these loops, because the text talks about how a good loop can turn insatiable and create runaway conditions.
Runaway conditions are fascinating.
I was trying to map this onto everyday human desires, and I realized something pretty funny. We don't have an insatiable desire for pizza.
No, we definitely do not.
After 3 or 4 slices, I am done. My body physically rejects the idea of more pizza. More pizza actually becomes a negative.
Your system hits a limit.
Right. So my question is, why do we have an insatiable desire for abstract things like status or money or power? How does a feedback loop jump the tracks and become a runaway condition if our biology has these built-in stopping points?
That is a really profound distinction. In most natural feedback loops, there is a built-in regulator. Like with your pizza example, your stomach stretches, your fat cells release leptin.
Leptin is the hormone that says stop.
Yeah, your brain receives a firm signal that says stop eating, and the system returns to equilibrium. But some desires, specifically status, safety, and affiliation, they do not have a biological leptin equivalent.
There's no stop switch.
Exactly. There is no hormone that tells your brain, you have enough status now, you can stop striving.
Because in early human evolution, more status generally meant a higher likelihood of survival. You couldn't really have too much safety in a dangerous environment.
Precisely. And when human culture builds a system that gamifies and rewards that universal desire for status and completely removes any natural friction or regulators, it turns insatiable.
It just goes into overdrive.
A biological drive meant to keep a hunter-gatherer safe in a small tribe gets ported into a global economy, and the feedback loop goes wild.
The sources provide a historical example of this with John Jacob Astor that really clarifies what a runaway system looks like in practice.
Let's dig into the context of that, because it's not just a footnote, it's a blueprint for how systems spiral out of control.
It is a dark but perfect blueprint. Let's go back to the early 1800s.
Okay, setting the scene.
Wealthy men in Europe developed a deep cultural affinity for beaver hats and coats. And we need to understand that this wasn't about keeping warm.
It wasn't about the cold weather.
Not at all. A beaver hat was the 19th century equivalent of wearing a Rolex or driving a supercar. It was purely a signaling mechanism for status and affiliation among the elite.
And because it was tied to status, the demand had no natural regulator. There was no leptin for beaver hats.
Exactly. Because of that insatiable desire for status, the demand for beaver pelts absolutely skyrocketed. The European elite hunted the local beaver populations to near extinction very quickly.
So they ran out of local supply.
But the cultural demand loop was still screaming for more status symbols, which created a massive, highly lucrative market opportunity across the Atlantic.
Enter John Jacob Astor in North America. He sees this infinite demand and commits his time, his resources, and his capital to acquiring as many beaver pelts from the North American wilderness as humanly possible.
Right.
He builds an empire, the American Fur Company. But he needs a way to maximize his leverage and extract the pelts efficiently from the people actually doing the work, the indigenous trappers.
So how does he manage to scale up the extraction to meet this runaway European demand?
By introducing a new, highly destructive element into the system.
What was it?
In order to extract better terms and keep the trappers working constantly, he offers them alcohol at a discount in exchange for pelts. He essentially weaponized a substance he knew caused chronic harm.
Oh, wow. He introduced a chemical feedback loop of addiction to feed the cultural feedback loop of status.
It is tragic. It ruined the health, the social fabric, and the family dynamics of the people he was trading with. But for Astor, it was incredibly efficient.
Because the addiction ensured a constant supply of labor.
Desperate labor, yes. And the ecological impact was massive. As the demand grew and the local populations were trapped out, the trappers were pushed further and further into the woods.
So the insatiable European desire to signal status at a dinner party in London literally reshaped the landscape, decimated animal populations, and destroyed indigenous communities across huge swaths of North America.
That is a feedback loop run amok. There was no regulator on the European desire for status, and early capitalism created the conditions to reward Astor's insatiable desire for money and power.
The system optimized for one specific output, pelts for profit. And it ignored every other consequence.
Yep.
It is chilling when you view history as a mechanic of a system rather than just a sequence of events.
Wow.
The system wasn't evil in a conscious sense. It was just a machine executing a runaway loop.
Just a machine doing its job without a stop switch.
And it is not just history. We see this architecture everywhere today. The text mentions the modern wedding industry as another example.
The wedding industry is a fascinating modern parallel, Because how did we end up in a culture that normalizes spending $50,000 or even $2 million on a single party?
It certainly isn't driven by a biological need to get married in a castle.
No, it is an insatiable feedback loop of status and affiliation, gamified by an industry that profits immensely from it. Think about the mechanics of a huge wedding.
Okay.
The bride or groom isn't just a person getting married. In the eyes of the wedding industrial complex, they are merely the system's way of making sure the venue is full of other guests who might be the next bride or groom.
Wow. The event is literally an advertisement for future events.
It's brilliant and terrifying.
You attend a friend's lavish wedding, and the system sets a new baseline for status. So when it's your turn, you feel the social pressure to match or exceed that baseline.
It's a self-replicating loop driven by the fear of falling behind socially. And the magazines, the venues, the planners, they all provide the friction-free runway for that desire to accelerate.
And this leads to a critical realization about dealing with systems. You cannot divorce the system from its side effects.
You really can't.
A shadow is part of the sunshine. That line from the text really lingered with me.
It is profound because we spend so much time trying to engineer the shadow away while keeping the sunshine.
Like we can just have the good parts without the bad.
Right. Think about the pioneers of the internet. They genuinely believed they were building a utopian platform for the free exchange of human knowledge. They weren't trying to build a frictionless delivery mechanism for trolls, propaganda, and misinformation.
But they got both.
They got both. Or the food scientists who created packaged convenience foods. They were trying to solve the problem of preserving calories and saving time for busy families.
They weren't hoping to cause a global spike in heart disease and diabetes.
But the side effects aren't anomalies. We treat them like bugs in the software, but they are features.
They are outputs produced with the same reliable mechanical regularity as the desired effects.
Exactly. The misinformation on social media isn't a glitch. It is the inevitable shadow of a system optimized for frictionless, algorithmic engagement.
And the health crises linked to processed food aren't an accident. They are the shadow of a system optimized for shelf life, hyperpalatability, and low cost.
So the practical takeaway for you listening to this is this. If you cannot accept the side effects of a system you are building or a system you are willingly entering, you cannot accept the system, period.
You have to look at the whole package, shadows included.
You can't just pick and choose.
You can't join a hyper-competitive, cutthroat investment bank and then act shocked when your colleagues stab you in the back. That is literally the weather in that particular ecosystem.
Which brings us to a pretty heavy but necessary juncture.
Let's hear it.
If the system is this massive, right, if it has this much historical gravity, if it relies on interoperability that we can't easily break, and if it naturally produces side effects that we hate, how do we actually win?
Yeah, how do we make things better without just exhausting ourselves, burning out, and becoming cynical?
I am so glad we are landing here, because the solution requires a total paradigm shift. Earlier, we touched on the idea that systemic advantage defeats heroic effort.
But we love heroic effort. It is thrilling.
It is. It is the movie montage where the protagonist stays up all night, drinks 10 cups of coffee, writes the brilliant code, or gives the impassioned speech that changes the world.
We all want to be that hero.
Heroic effort makes for great cinema, but it is terrible strategy. It doesn't scale, and more importantly, it doesn't last.
Yeah.
The human body and mind cannot sustain that level of output.
So what's the alternative to the hero?
The text introduces a concept that I think is the perfect antidote to the myth of the lone hero. It is called chiseling.
Chiseling. Let's spend some serious time on chiseling. The text quotes Saul Alinsky, the famous labor organizer and writer. What was his fundamental insight into fighting entrenched systems?
Alinsky understood power dynamics better than almost anyone. He said that the most useful systems insight is the development of operations that maintain a constant pressure upon the opposition.
Constant pressure.
Note the word constant, not a sudden violent burst of pressure, not a viral social media campaign that flares up for 3 days and disappears. Constant, unceasing, annoying pressure.
I'm trying to visualize why that is so effective. I suppose it's because resilient systems, whether it's a stubborn corporation or a political machine, they evolve specifically to resist short-term pressure.
They absolutely do. The system has more resources, more money, and more time than you do as an individual.
Right.
They are completely accustomed to activists or angry customers or rogue middle managers showing up, making a lot of noise, demanding change, getting frustrated, and eventually losing interest or burning out.
So the system literally just sets its watch and waits for you to get tired.
The side with the longest attention span wins. Always.
Always. And unfortunately, the status quo usually has an infinite attention span because it doesn't require any extra energy to maintain itself. It just exists.
Exactly. So how do you outlast an opponent that doesn't need to sleep?
You chisel.
You chisel. But here is the vital nuance. It is not just you, alone in a room, hacking away at a giant stone block with a tiny hammer.
Because that would just be another form of heroic burnout.
Yes, that is just slower burnout. Chiseling, in a strategic sense, is about organizing 100 people or 1,000 people to show up and persist every single day.
Oh, I see.
The individual change you make with one strike of the chisel doesn't matter nearly as much as your persistence in organizing others to strike alongside you.
So we change systems by building our own systems. We build a counter system that produces change as its natural daily output.
Yes, you build scaffolding. You construct an environment where it is easy and natural for other people to apply that constant pressure.
What does that scaffolding look like in a modern business context? Like, give me an example of someone chiseling rather than being a hero.
Okay, imagine you want to change your company's toxic meeting culture.
Oh, everyone wants to change that.
Right. The heroic approach is to stand up in an all-hands meeting, declare that meetings are a waste of time, and demand a new policy.
And what happens?
The system will reject that. You will be labeled a troublemaker, and nothing will change. The chiseling approach is building scaffolding.
Okay.
You quietly find 3 other colleagues who feel the same way. You agree to a shared protocol. You only accept meeting invites that have a clear agenda, and you leave after 30 minutes, no exceptions.
You support each other in doing it.
Exactly. It creates a small, consistent pension. Over time, other people notice that your team is getting more deep work done. They ask how you do it. You share the protocol.
You are organizing a network of nodes to establish a new road.
You maintain constant pressure on the old culture simply by consistently practicing the new one.
I love that. You build a machine that does the chiseling for you. It relies on consistency and alignment rather than raw force. And, this reminds me of a bizarre but perfect metaphor from the sources. Fruit flies like a banana.
It is such a strange, memorable image.
It really is. Picture this. You don't stand in your kitchen and shout orders for fruit flies to appear.
No, you don't.
You don't draft a mission statement to attract them. You don't send them a calendar invite. You just take a ripe banana, you put it on the windowsill, and you walk away.
You create the conditions for the flies to arrive.
That is the absolute essence of an elegant strategy. Marketers, organizers, and leaders so often think their job is to hustle, to hype, to persuade, to shout the loudest.
They think they need to grab people by the collar and drag them into the new system.
But true strategic marketing, true systemic change, is about placing the banana on the sill.
You create the conditions for people who already want to go where you're going to join you. You use the natural tension, the desire for status, and the human need for affiliation to help them make the journey.
You don't force them, you facilitate them.
You make the new road easier to walk down than the old road.
It takes so much of the frantic anxiety out of trying to do great work. Stop looking for the silver bullet. Stop waiting for a viral moment on social media to suddenly change the trajectory of your company or your career.
Strategy is a long, deliberate journey, not a singular event.
Find the people who want what you want. Build the scaffolding to support them, and commit to the persistent work of chiseling.
If we pull all of these threads together, the gravity, the interoperability, the runway loops, and the chiseling, what we're really looking at is a fundamental re-understanding of how the world operates.
It really is a whole new lens.
A system is an invisible river.
An invisible river. Let's unpack the mechanics of that metaphor to close this out.
You cannot fight the current of a massive rushing river through sheer individual willpower. If you jump in and try to swim upstream, you will exhaust yourself and drown.
Because the river has been carving that path for a long time.
And you certainly can't replace all the water.
But you aren't helpless.
No, you aren't. If you understand the gravity pulling that water, if you accept that the river doesn't care about you or your goals, and if you persistently chisel away at the banks with a community of others, you can actually redirect its flow.
You alter the landscape so that the water naturally wants to go in a new direction.
True strategy isn't about exhausting yourself. It is about seeing the invisible roads, building a systemic advantage, and having the patience to simply outlast the status quo.
Seeing the invisible roads, that is the ultimate takeaway. And as we wrap up this deep dive into Godin's work, I want to leave you with one final thought from the text to mull over. Think about the biggest obstacle you are facing at work or in your creative life right now.
Keep it in mind.
Maybe it's a client who refuses to sign a contract, a middle manager who won't approve your project, or an institution that keeps rejecting your applications. Here's the thought. The person in front of you is part of a system, but they aren't the system.
They are just a node.
Are you getting angry and frustrated trying to persuade a person who literally isn't allowed by their system's rules, their interoperability, or their status incentives to say yes? Are you pitching your heart out to a single node when you should be thinking about how to shift the network that governs them?
It completely changes how you approach your daily battles. It demands profound empathy for the individual person trapped in the node, but strategic ruthlessness regarding the system they inhabit.
Empathy for the node, ruthlessness for the network. Take that perspective into your next meeting or your next big project, and make sure to look out for our next deep dive where we are going to explore the concept of finding your minimum viable audience. Because as we've learned today, trying to change or please the entire massive system all at once is a guaranteed way to change absolutely nothing.
What if the real reason a project fails isn't, the final mistake you made, but a hidden decision you made before you even started?
It's a haunting thought, honestly. I mean, we spend so much of our lives obsessing over that final stumble.
Right, the last thing that went wrong.
Exactly. We analyze the immediate misstep, and we are just completely blind to the fact that the path we chose, like months or even years ago, was always going to lead us off a cliff.
Yeah.
We just focus on the fall, not the map.
I feel like we live in a world that is just entirely obsessed with quick maneuvers, Yeah. It's all about the hustle.
Oh, yeah. The life hacks.
Right, life hacks.
Yeah.
Optimizing your morning routine, just pushing for immediate visible results. But what we're going to unpack today is that without a fundamental strategy, all of that hustle it's just driving in circles.
Yeah, driving really, really quickly.
Right. You might be burning a ton of fuel, but you aren't actually getting anywhere.
And, the illusion of speed is incredibly comforting to a lot of people.
It feels like progress.
It really does. But understanding the difference between moving fast and moving strategically, well, that's the ultimate unlock.
Whether you're building a business or, managing a career.
Or just trying to get a creative project off the ground, this distinction is the one that actually matters for you.
So true. So today we are taking a deep dive into a massive stack of notes, case studies, and essays from Seth Godin. And this is focusing entirely on how we make better plans.
We're really going to explore the profound difference between strategy and tactics here.
Yeah, you are going to learn how to stop obsessing over those short-term wins and how to design a long-term compass for your work.
And why mastering the unseen systems around you is just the absolute most critical skill for anyone building a business today.
So let's just jump right into the deep end here.
Yeah.
What is the actual functional difference between strategy and tactics?
Yeah.
Because, I hear these words thrown around in corporate meetings like they mean the exact same thing.
Oh, all the time. They are thrown around interchangeably, and it causes massive organizational confusion. So the simplest way to frame it is to stop thinking of a strategy as a map.
Okay, not a map.
Right. A map implies a fixed terrain where you just, follow the dotted line to the treasure. Strategy is a compass.
A compass, I like that.
Yeah, it's a philosophy of becoming. It asks these heavy structural questions like, who will we become? Who will be of service to?
Yeah.
And who will they help others to become? Tactics are entirely different.
So what are they then?
They are the short-term maneuvers. They are the flexible, highly disposable steps we take right now to win short-term games.
Disposable. I love thinking of it that way.
Yeah.
If a tactic doesn't work, you just throw it in the trash and try a new one. It's a tool, not your identity.
Exactly. A tactic is merely what we do next. A strategy is, well, it's the overarching architecture of all the nexts, one after the other.
Oh, that makes sense.
Right. So strategy is something that respects time and relies on time to unfold. Tactics are just for right now, the immediate present.
Let's ground this with a concrete piece of history we pulled from the notes, because I feel like this story perfectly isolates the two concepts.
Oh, the 1968 race?
Yes, the 1968 Sunday Times sailing race. The setup is just wild. So the Sunday Times of London offered a massive cash reward to the first person who could single-handedly sail around the world nonstop.
Which is an insane challenge.
Totally. So you have these incredibly brave, arguably slightly crazy sailors committing to this monumental thing.
Hmm.
But before they even touch the water, they are forced to make strategic choices.
Right, and those pre-water choices dictate everything.
Yeah.
The sailors have to decide, what kind of boat am I taking? Do I use a wooden boat, which is inherently fragile, but much easier to repair with basic tools if something goes wrong in the middle of the Pacific?
That's a huge decision.
Or do I use a steel-hulled boat, which is incredibly heavy and slower, but, well, highly unlikely to break in the first place?
And what kind of radio equipment do you bring?
Exactly. Do I carry heavy spare parts or do I travel light to increase speed? Do I even enter this race at all, given my current skill level?
Those are the strategic decisions. They set the boundaries of reality for the rest of the journey.
Yes, absolutely.
But then once they are out on the open ocean, the tactics take over.
Right. When a sudden squall hits or, I don't know, a mast snaps or they have to navigate around an iceberg.
Right. Then it's about what is the best, most flexible option in that exact moment to keep the boat moving.
The tactics are the immediate reactions to the environment, but they are entirely constrained by the strategy.
So how did the winner pull it off?
Well, the winner of that race, Robin Knox Johnston, he didn't win simply because he was the most athletic sailor pulling ropes in the thunderstorm.
Right. It wasn't just physical hustle.
No, he won because his overarching strategy perfectly supported his tactical reality. He had a very specific philosophy on boat maintenance, pacing, and self-reliance.
Which compensated for the inevitable mishaps he faced.
Exactly. He chose the right compass heading, so when he had to navigate the immediate, terrifying obstacles, his tactical choices were aligned with his ultimate goal of survival and completion.
I'm picturing this like the mechanics of a car. Are tactics essentially the engine, and strategy is the steering wheel?
That's a really good way to look at it.
Because if you have this massive supercharged engine, which represents your hustle, your daily grind, your endless energy, but you have a broken steering wheel, you're just going to crash into a brick wall a lot faster than the person with a smaller engine.
Worse than just crashing, you're building what Godin would call a non-strategy.
A non-strategy.
Right. The illusion of a powerful engine tricks you into pressing the gas pedal all the way down, just hoping the speed itself will magically produce a destination.
Which it never does.
Never. The non-strategy of, just take what you can get or blind hustle is deeply seductive because it feels like work.
It really does. You're exhausted at the end of the day.
But the number on your speedometer isn't an indication that you are getting closer to where you want to be. It simply measures how fast your wheels are spinning.
And yet, we completely idolize the spinning wheels.
Oh, absolutely.
We reward the busyness. We promote the manager who is frantically putting out fires at 9 p.m. on a Friday.
Which brings us to this incredibly pervasive trap, analyzing the last move.
Yeah, I see this happen in every industry. A huge project fails, a partnership dissolves, a product launch flatlines.
And what happened?
Everyone immediately sits in a conference room trying to figure out what went wrong in the final 5 minutes.
It is a deeply ingrained human reflex. I mean, think about when a football team loses the Super Bowl.
Oh.
The fans and the commentators spend weeks agonizing over the final play call.
Always the last pass.
Or when a marriage hits the rocks, the couple focuses on the most recent argument over the dishes. But by focusing on the last move, we are entirely ignoring the structural foundation. The real vulnerability, the fatal flaw, is almost always in the first move, or, perhaps the fifth move.
It's a hidden foundational decision made months or years ago that created the conditions for that final failure to even be possible.
Exactly.
It's like building a house on quicksand and then blaming the roof for caving in.
Yes. The issue wasn't the shingles.
The issue was deciding to build on a swamp in the first place.
Right. And the research highlights a brilliant concept from software engineering here, specifically Steve McConnell's work on project management.
Oh, the thrashing concept.
Yes. He talks about the necessity of thrashing at the start.
Which is such a great phrase.
McConnell points out a dynamic that is logically undeniable but almost universally ignored in practice.
Which is?
It is infinitely cheaper to change course, debate features, and explore your options at the very beginning of a project than it is at the end.
It sounds so obvious when you say it out loud.
But we do it completely backward.
We really do. We avoid the hard conversations on day one. We wait until the software is like 90% coded or the building's foundation is poured and the walls are up to suddenly bring in the CEO or the review board.
Right, when everyone is exhausted.
Exactly. The budget is depleted, the deadline is looming, and then we ask for approval, or worse, start arguing about what the core features should actually be.
Because the cost of altering a digital blueprint is practically zero,
Yeah.
but the cost of altering a physical building once the steel is welded is astronomical.
So why do we do it?
Because we push the thrashing, the exploration of options, the intense debate, the vulnerable admission that we don't know the exact path yet, to the end of the timeline, because thrashing creates interpersonal tension.
People hate tension.
They do.
Let's dig into that tension. What does thrashing actually look like if you do it right?
Well,
Like, how do you force a team of eager people who just want to start building to sit down and argue?
it requires a leader who is willing to orchestrate discomfort.
Orchestrate discomfort.
Right. A healthy thrashing phase means you lock the key stakeholders in a room and you demand dissent.
Oh, wow.
You say, we are not writing a single line of code. We are not spending a single dollar of the marketing budget until we agree on the assertions we are making about the market.
People will hate that.
They will say they are wasting time. The engineers will want to start typing. The marketers will want to start designing logos.
Yeah, everyone wants to feel productive.
But the discipline of strategy is holding that space and absorbing that frustration until the compass is calibrated.
Why is that so terrifying for us, though?
Yeah.
If the logic is so sound, if it saves money, saves time, and prevents catastrophic failure, why do we actively, almost subconsciously, avoid having a strategy and doing that hard thrashing work up front?
This gets to the psychological root of the issue.
Okay.
It's a profound fear of freedom.
Fear of freedom.
Yes. Strategy grants you immense agency. It boldly declares, you have choices. You can design this world.
Right.
But freedom is inextricably linked to responsibility.
Oh, I see.
If you take the time to design a bespoke strategy and you announce it to the world and then it fails...
The failure is entirely on your shoulders.
Exactly. It is a terrifying level of accountability.
Wow. I see where this is going. By not having a strategy, we are subconsciously building an escape hatch for our egos.
Precisely.
Because if I just adopt a non-strategy, if I just hustle blindly, do what everyone else is doing and it doesn't work out, I don't have to look in the mirror.
Right. You can just blame the economy.
I can blame the algorithm. I can whine about how unfair the system is instead of actually stepping up to lead.
That is the tragic comfort of the non-strategy. Awaiting instructions, playing it safe, mimicking the competition. These are all ways to hide.
Yeah.
Owning the initial strategic design means owning the ultimate outcome. And for many people, the psychological safety of having someone else to blame is far more valuable than the potential success of a true strategy.
That is heavy. The realization that our lack of planning is actually a defense mechanism.
It really is.
Okay, so for you listening right now, if you are ready to drop the defense mechanism and you are ready to actually take responsibility and build a strategy, where do you start?
Well, the research stresses that strategy does not exist in a vacuum.
Right, it isn't just a document you type up on a Sunday afternoon.
No, it is woven from 4 specific, often unseen threads.
Let's break those down.
You cannot isolate a strategy from the environment it operates within. The 4 foundational threads are time, games, empathy, and systems.
Time, games, empathy, and system.
Yes, each thread supports the others, and ignoring even one of them will cause the entire strategic tapestry to unravel.
Let's start with games and systems, because there is this fantastic, highly visual analogy in the notes about miniature golf that really clicked for me.
I love that one.
Right. So picture a standard mini golf course. You're standing at the classic windmill hole. The strategy for this game is incredibly linear, right?
Very simple.
You watch the windmill blade, you calculate the timing, and you hit the neon orange golf ball. The windmill is completely indifferent to your existence.
Doesn't care about you.
It doesn't speed up when you pull your putter back. It doesn't try to block your shot.
Right, because the windmill is a static system. The rules are fixed, the environment is dead, and success is merely a matter of personal execution.
But real-world strategy is never miniature golf.
Never. The marketplace, the workplace, human relationships, these are not static. Real strategy is more like playing a brutal game of rugby or, a highly sophisticated game of chess.
Because you are dealing with other human beings.
Exactly.
If you make a brilliant move with your knight in chess, your opponent doesn't just keep spinning at a constant RPM like the windmill.
No, they look at your move, they analyze your intent, and they respond.
They actively try to thwart you. They adapt.
And this introduction of other actors is where the threads of empathy and systems become paramount.
How so?
Well, in any complex system, you are navigating around people who have their own deeply held goals, their own desires, and their own precarious social status to protect.
Right.
Furthermore, the system itself, whether that is the entrenched culture of a legacy corporation or the labyrinthine bureaucracy of a government agency.
Or even just the entrenched buying habits of a consumer market.
Exactly. It has a persistent, almost biological drive to survive.
It's like an immune system.
Yes. The notes use the solar system to explain how these forces operate invisibly.
Oh, the gravity analogy.
Think about the mechanics of gravity in our solar system. You cannot see it. You cannot touch it.
There is no CEO of gravity issuing memos.
Exactly. But it quietly, relentlessly, and absolutely dictates the orbital path of every single planet and asteroid.
And systems in business and culture function the exact same way.
They do. The unspoken rules of a workplace, the cultural norms of a community, they exert a gravitational pull whether you acknowledge them or not.
So if you build a strategy that ignores the gravity of the system you are operating within,
You are doomed. You cannot simply command a planet to change its orbit just because it looks better on your spreadsheet.
right. But I want to push back on this because it feels a little defeatist.
Okay, let's hear it.
If a system like a rigid corporate culture or a stubborn consumer market acts like gravity, and its natural resting state is to resist change to keep tension low, how do we ever introduce anything new?
That's the million-dollar question.
If I have a disruptive, brilliant idea, won't the immune system of the status quo just immediately swarm it and kill it?
That is the paradox of change, and it is precisely why the thread of empathy is non-negotiable.
Empathy.
Yes, if you try to force a complex system to change through brute force or by simply shouting your features louder than the competition, the immune system will absolutely crush you.
So what's the alternative?
You have to design the conditions where the individuals embedded within that system actually desire to align with your change.
But how do you manufacture that desire? I mean, if people naturally hate tension, how do you make them want to endure the tension of adopting my new software or buying my new product?
Well, you don't manufacture desire.
You don't.
No, you tap into the desires that already exist.
Oh, okay.
You have to understand what drives human behavior once our basic survival needs are met. We are constantly navigating three conflicting, powerful urges:
Okay.
affiliation, status, and freedom from fear.
Affiliation, status, freedom from fear. Okay, unpack those.
Affiliation is the primal urge to fit in, to be part of the tribe, to not be cast out.
Right.
Status is entirely relative. It is the constant calculation of who is up, who is down, who has the power.
Everyone cares about status, even if they say they don't.
Exactly. And freedom from fear is our endless search for reassurance and safety.
So if I bring a new workflow software to my team and my strategy is just this is 10% faster, I'm totally ignoring empathy.
Completely ignoring it.
Because the team might look at the software and think, this makes me feel stupid because I don't know how to use it, which is fear. It might make my role obsolete, which is loss of status. And no one else in my industry is using it, which is loss of affiliation.
Yes. And so the system rejects it no matter how fast it is.
Wow. So how does a brilliant strategy handle that?
A brilliant strategy anticipates that exact friction. Instead of fighting the gravity of those fears, an empathetic strategy uses them.
It uses the gravity.
Yes, you position the new software by showing how it makes the user an insider, which taps into affiliation.
Right.
How mastering it will make them the most valuable person in the department. That's status.
Well, that's smart.
And you provide overwhelming support so they feel completely safe trying it, which gives them freedom from fear. You align the new idea with what the actors in the system already crave.
So you aren't fighting the gravitational pull. You were using it to slingshot your project forward.
Like a spacecraft using Jupiter's gravity to accelerate out of the solar system.
I love that. You map the unseen forces before you make a single move. You respect the gravity, and then you choreograph your strategy to dance with it.
Exactly.
That shifts the entire paradigm of how we plan. It means strategy isn't just this selfish declaration of what I want to achieve and how much money I want to make.
Not at all. It is fundamentally an exercise in environmental awareness and deep psychology.
So translating this high-level philosophy into the dirt and grit of actually building a business, the research emphasizes the necessity of a blueprint. specifically defining your business model.
And there is a harsh truth here that is going to shatter some illusions.
Let's do it. Shatter the illusions.
We need to demystify what a business model actually is. It is not a pitch deck. It is not a mission statement. The definition is brutally elegant. A business model is the mechanism of getting compensated for creating value in a way that allows you to keep doing it.
Getting compensated to keep doing it. I want to linger on that because the implication is pretty staggering.
It is.
If you are creating immense value, if you're genuinely helping people, but you aren't getting compensated enough to sustain your life and your work, you don't have a business model.
No.
You have a hobby, a potentially very expensive, exhausting hobby.
And this ties directly back to the first strategic thread we discussed. Time.
Time.
Time is the ultimate unforgiving constraint. You can have the most empathetic, system-aware idea in the world. But if the financial mechanics don't sustain the operation, the clock will run out.
You literally just run out of time.
The money will evaporate, and you will be forced to stop. A strategy without a functioning, sustainable business model is just a temporary performance.
Which flies directly in the face of the most popular, deeply entrenched advice in modern culture.
Oh, the passion advice.
Yes. We see it on every inspirational poster and every commencement speech. Follow your passion, do what you love, and the money will naturally follow.
It sounds so good.
It does. But the notes suggest this is actually an incredibly brittle, dangerous way to build a life. But man, giving up on the dream of turning your weekend passion into a career feels painful.
It does feel painful.
Are you telling the listener to abandon their dream of opening an indie bookstore or an artisan bakery just to go sell, like, B2B logistics software because the profit margins are better?
It is not about abandoning joy, I promise. It is about protecting your art from the crushing pressure of capitalism.
Oh, protecting your art.
Yes. Very few people are fortunate enough to get paid a premium for their personal hobbies. If you blindly follow your passion, you are actually violating the rule of empathy.
How so?
You are saying, I love doing this, therefore the market must pay me for it. But the market doesn't care about your passion.
The market is indifferent.
Completely. The market only cares about its own problems. The more resilient, mature strategy is to invert the cliche.
How do you invert it?
You find a solid, generative business model that solves a real, agonizing problem for a specific group of people. You find a place where value is eagerly exchanged for compensation. And then you decide to bring your passion to that work.
You decide to be passionate.
Yes. You decide to be passionate about the craft of solving that problem, about the people you are helping, and about the freedom that a functional business model affords you.
I see. It's the difference between demanding the world pay you to paint versus finding joy in designing interfaces that help thousands of people communicate better.
Exactly. You still get to be creative, but you are aligning with an existing market.
Which brings up the quinceañera example.
Yes, let's talk about that.
I found this to be the most clarifying illustration of the difference between a human need and an actual viable market. Walk me through this.
It perfectly exposes a massive blind spot for entrepreneurs. We frequently conflate emotional needs with economic markets.
We think they're the same thing.
We do. But a market is a very specific, tangible thing. It is a category of commerce where people already possess the ingrained habits, the allocated budgets, and the cultural momentum to spend money. Consider the quinceañera, the elaborate, traditional 15th birthday celebration.
Huge deal.
Yes. In many Central and South American cultures, there is a massive, highly structured market for this. Families save for years. There are dressmakers, caterers, and venues dedicated solely to this event.
The economic plumbing is already installed.
Now, transplant that concept to a 15-year-old girl living in a culture that does not celebrate quinceañeras, say, rural Japan or a suburb in Sweden.
Okay.
That 15-year-old girl possesses the exact same psychological needs as the girl in Mexico. She needs to feel special. She craves the status of transitioning into adulthood. She wants the affiliation of her friends gathering to celebrate her.
The human need is universal.
Absolutely. But the market for a quinceañera in that second culture is absolutely zero.
So if an ambitious entrepreneur says, look at all these teenagers, they have a deep need for status and celebration. I'm going to open a premium quinceañera dress shop in Stockholm.
They are going to go bankrupt.
They found the emotional need, but they completely hallucinated the market.
Right, because the cultural habit of spending $5,000 on a dress for a 15th birthday just doesn't exist there.
So what's the takeaway for a business strategy?
Attempting to pioneer a brand new market To install that economic and cultural plumbing from scratch is one of the most expensive, exhausting, and statistically improbable strategies you can attempt.
You are asking people to fundamentally change their worldview.
Their worldview, their financial habits, and their cultural traditions. It's too much friction.
So what should we do instead?
A far superior strategy is to locate a market that already exists, where money is already flowing, and make a bold assertion about how you can serve that specific market better, differently, or more efficiently.
Okay, so we know we need to respect the system, we need a real business model, and we need to target an existing market, not just a latent need.
Correct.
How do we actually codify this? Because a traditional method is writing a 50-page MBA business plan full of pie charts and 5-year projections that, let's be honest, are entirely fictional.
Fictional, yeah.
The research introduces an alternative, the 6-part modern business plan. I want to spend some real time on this because this is the actionable blueprint you, the listener, can use today.
And you should, because the traditional business plan is a relic. It is primarily used to obfuscate risk and demonstrate compliance to a bank.
It's just a hoop to jump through.
It is an exercise in creative writing, not strategic thinking.
Wow.
The 6-part modern business plan strips away all the corporate fluff and forces you to confront the actual mechanics of your strategy.
Let's run through the 6 parts.
The 6 parts are truth, assertions, alternatives, people, money, and time.
Let's unpack part 1, truth. I assume this isn't where you pitch how amazing your product is.
Definitely not. The truth section must be entirely devoid of your product, your ego, and your hopes.
Ouch.
It is a sterile, objective mapping of the world as it currently exists. It is the gravity check.
The gravity check, I like that.
What are the undeniable facts of the market? What are the entrenched habits of the consumers? Who are the dominant competitors, and what are their actual advantages?
So no sugarcoating.
None. What are the technological constraints? If you show this section to a fierce competitor, they should agree with everything written in it.
Oh, that's a great test.
You cannot change a system until you are brutally honest about how the system currently functions.
That takes discipline. It's so tempting to sprinkle your own bias into the truth.
It is, but you have to resist.
But once we establish reality, we move to part 2, assertions. This is where we finally get to make our move, right?
This is the engine room of the strategy. Having established the truth, you now state exactly how you intend to alter it.
Give me an example.
You say, we're going to introduce X, and because of the psychological drivers of the market, the consumers will respond by doing Y.
Ah, okay.
This is where you detail the tension you intend to introduce and how your specific business model will capture the value created by resolving that tension.
But let's be real, assertions are essentially just highly educated guesses.
They are.
We are predicting human behavior, which is notoriously unpredictable. Which makes part 3, in my opinion, the most critical stress test of the whole document. Alternatives.
Yes, an assertion without an alternative is just a fragile wish.
A fragile wish.
The alternatives section forces you to engage in preemptive crisis management. What exactly will you do when your primary assertion is proven completely wrong?
Because it will be.
Almost certainly. What happens when the prototype costs twice as much to manufacture? What happens when the target demographic ignores your marketing campaign?
Or what happens when a global supply chain completely collapses?
Right. If your plan requires every single assumption to be 100% correct in order to survive, you do not have a strategy. You are buying a lottery ticket.
You are building a boat with no lifeboats. You have to write down the pivot before you need the pivot.
Exactly.
Okay, part 4, people. The notes explicitly warn against just pasting in a bunch of impressive resumes here. Why are resumes a bad metric for this plan?
Because a resume is a historical document of compliance.
Oh, a historical document of compliance. That stings.
It tells you where someone sat at a desk in the past. It is a false proxy for future impact.
So what should we be looking for?
The people section of this plan must highlight the specific attitudes, the resilience, the unique abilities, and the undeniable track record of actually shipping difficult work.
It's about who they are in a crisis.
Yes. It asks, who is in the boat with you right now, and what kind of specific human capital do you need to attract to execute your assertions?
Can they handle the inevitable need to pivot to the alternatives?
That's the real test.
Okay, part 5, money. This feels straightforward, but it's really about calculating your runway, right?
Yes. Money and time are the two non-renewable resources that constrain the entire project. The money section strips away the vanity metrics.
It asks us the hard questions.
How much cash do you actually need to reach the point where the business model sustains itself? What does the granular cash flow look like?
All right.
And most importantly, what tangible assets are you building along the way that will provide leverage in the future, even if the primary product struggles?
And finally, part 6, time.
Time is the canvas. How long will the assertions take to test? What specific milestones will indicate whether you are on track or if you need to deploy an alternative?
How does the passage of time inform your feedback loops?
Exactly. This 6-part framework doesn't allow you to hide behind impressive formatting. It forces you to answer the hardest questions up front.
Which brings us right back to the vital necessity of thrashing at the start.
It all connects.
It's brilliant. It's a living document, not a binder that gathers dust on a shelf.
Exactly.
Okay, so let's say you, the listener, you do all this. You have your compass, you deeply understand the system and the gravity, you have your brutally honest 6-part blueprint.
You're in a good spot.
Now we enter the danger zone, execution and scale. Because it feels like this is where perfectly good, well-intentioned strategies suddenly blow up in spectacular fashion.
Yes, and the research points to a concept called leverage.
Leverage.
Leverage is intoxicating. In physics, leverage allows you to move a massive boulder with a small lever. In business, leverage is the act of borrowing resources, usually money, time, or technology, to make a proven strategy operate louder, faster, and wider.
So, like, if you have a factory machine that profitably produces 100 widgets a day, leverage is taking out a massive bank loan to buy 50 more machines.
Precisely.
But on the surface, that sounds like exactly what you are supposed to do. You prove the model, now you scale it up and reap the rewards.
It is exactly what you should do, provided you understand that leverage is completely agnostic.
Agnostic.
Yes. It exaggerates the positive, but it simultaneously and violently exaggerates the negative.
Oh, wow.
The notes use a highly poetic phrase here to describe this phenomenon. The shadow of the sunshine.
The shadow of the sunshine.
Every system, every product, every strategy casts a shadow. There is the desired primary intent, and then there are the inevitable unintended side effects.
This makes me think of the early days of social media.
Perfect example.
Right. The pioneers of the internet weren't sitting in a room maliciously trying to build a global platform for misinformation and trolls.
No, of course not.
Their intent, the sunshine, was global connection and democratized communication. But when they applied the massive leverage of algorithmic scaling and billions of dollars in venture capital,
It exaggerated the darkest elements of human behavior.
the side effects scaled just as aggressively as the profits.
That is a perfect, albeit tragic, example. If your strategy relies on leverage, you cannot plead ignorance when the side effects manifest.
You have to be structurally prepared to accept, manage, and mitigate the shadow.
Because leverage will amplify the cracks in your foundation until they become chasms.
And this ambition for scale often leads directly into one of the most common, fatal traps for entrepreneurs: the mismatch between the scale of the ambition and the reality of the assets.
Yes.
This is one of the most vivid, terrifying analogies in the entire stack of research, the half-a-boat dilemma.
It's a sobering image.
I want to paint this picture clearly for the listener. Imagine you want to build an asset, you want to launch a project, you want to make an impact. To do this, you require resources, time and money.
Right.
If you run out of either of those, the project dies. The absolute unbreakable rule of strategy is this: the scale of your project must exactly match the reality of your assets.
Yes. If the scale exceeds the assets, you are engaging in the futile act of building half a boat.
And the brutal truth of the ocean is that 99% of a boat is a sinking boat.
It doesn't matter how beautiful it is. A stunning multi-million-dollar 100-foot yacht that is 99% watertight is going to the bottom of the sea just as surely as a leaky canoe.
The capacity limit example really stuck with me.
The river crossing.
Yeah. Let's say you have built a sturdy little boat. Based on the time and money you invested, this boat can safely carry exactly 9 people across a treacherous river.
Okay, 9 people.
But you are ambitious.
Yep.
You have a big heart. You want to scale. You look at the shore and say, I want to help more people. I can't just leave that 10th person behind.
So you put 10 people into a 9-person boat.
Right. And what happens?
And the physics of the system take over. The boat sits too low in the water, it swamps, and it sinks.
But here's the tragedy of that decision. Not only does the 10th person not get across the river, but you have now drowned the original 9 people you were already serving.
Exactly. By stretching your limited assets to accommodate a larger scale, by trying to be a hero, you ruin the experience for absolutely everyone.
This mathematical reality exposes the deeply seductive, fatal trap of seeking everyone.
Oh, we all want everyone.
Right. In marketing, in product development, in art, we have this innate desire for a unanimous standing ovation.
We want to reach the mass market. We want everyone to love what we do.
But if you try to spread your limited time, your limited budget, and your limited focus across the vast expanse of everyone, you dilute your value to the point of irrelevance.
You offer a tiny, microscopic sliver of value to a massive crowd.
And offering a tiny bit of value to 1 million people gets you absolutely zero traction. No one cares.
No one changes their behavior for a tiny bit of value.
Exactly. They won't engage. So what is the strategic alternative?
The discipline is this. You do not build half a boat.
Make a whole small boat.
Right. If your assets are small, if you only have a little bit of time and a little bit of money, you must ruthlessly make your target audience smaller.
Shrink the scale of your ambition to match the reality of your resources.
You find what Godin calls the smallest viable audience, and you overwhelm that specific tiny group with immense, undeniable value.
I understand the math. I understand the logic. But I have to be honest, it feels absolutely terrifying to intentionally stand up and declare, I'm going to actively ignore 90% of the available market.
It does. It feels exclusionary.
It feels like you are leaving money on the table. How do you get comfortable with intentionally leaving people behind on the shore?
You have to fundamentally reframe your perspective through the lens of positioning.
Positioning.
Yes, positioning is not an act of malice. It is an act of extreme clarity and generosity.
Generosity.
Right.
How so?
It is the strategic act of turning your fierce competitors into your colleagues. You plant your flag and you clearly state, we do this specific thing for these specific people. If you want that other thing, you should go to them. They are great at it.
Oh, wow. We do this, they do that.
Exactly. It removes the friction.
It removes the need to constantly look over your shoulder and copy what the giant corporation is doing.
Yes. When you draw that hard line, you create protective boundaries that allow you to focus all of your limited assets on delivering overwhelming transformational value to the people inside your circle.
So you aren't failing the mass market. You are succeeding wildly for your chosen market.
Exactly. If you panic, if you try to collapse to the center and please everyone, you strip away everything that makes you unique.
You just become a bland commodity.
And you are forced to play a short-term, unwinnable race to the bottom on price.
Nobody wins that race.
Nobody. True, sustainable strategy is found on the edges where you can be distinctly, undeniably valuable to a specific group that desperately needs exactly what you have to offer.
Okay, let's pull all of these massive threads together. We have covered an incredible amount of terrain today.
We really have.
We started by separating the compass of strategy from the short-term hustle and disposal of tactics.
Right.
We dissected the danger of analyzing the last move and the absolute necessity of braving the tension of thrashing early.
Yes, the 1968 race, all of that.
We mapped the unseen gravitational systems of the world and how to navigate them using empathy. We threw the bloated MBA business plan in the trash in favor of a lean, 6-part blueprint built on truth and alternatives.
And we learned why putting 10 people in a 9-person boat isn't heroic, it's a disaster.
Exactly. So if we synthesize all of this complexity down to its core essence, what is the soul of this material?
The soul is a fundamental, almost spiritual shift in how we view our daily efforts.
Okay.
Tactics are the immediate, necessary maneuvers we deploy to win the short-term games of today. But strategy is the profound work of how we navigate complex, long-term systems over the span of time.
It brings us back to that beautiful grounding metaphor from the very beginning of the notes.
The garden metaphor.
Yes. Strategy is the soil, the quality of the seed, and the vision of the gardener all working in concert over seasons and years.
And tactics.
Tactics are simply the daily act of watering.
That is the perfect distillation because you can be the hardest working, most dedicated waterer in the entire world.
You can wake up at 4 a.m., optimize your routine, hustle harder than anyone else.
And pour oceans of water on the ground. But if you carelessly planted the wrong seed, in toxic soil in a climate that cannot sustain it.
If your foundational strategy is flawed.
Right. Your heroic, exhausting effort will not matter. The plant will die. Systemic advantage defeats heroic effort every single time.
Systemic advantage defeats heroic effort. That is the line to write in bold marker on a sticky note and put on the center of your monitor.
It really is.
So for you listening right now, wherever you are. Look at the project you are pouring your life into. Are you just furiously watering the dirt, or have you actually taken the time to design the garden?
Do you have a compass heading that you trust, or are you just driving a really fast car in the dark, hoping you don't hit a wall?
It takes immense courage to stop the busy work, to put the watering can down for a minute, and step back to analyze the system.
It feels unproductive in the short term, for sure.
But it is the only way to build something that actually survives the long term.
Absolutely.
Now that you have your strategic compass in hand, and you know how to map the unseen forces of gravity around you, what happens when the status quo wakes up and actively tries to destroy your new idea?
Because trust me, the system will fight back.
Oh, it always does.
Uh,
Next time, we're diving deep into the paradox of change, the mechanics of toxic systems, and how to outmaneuver the gatekeepers standing in your way. It is going to be intense, and you really won't want to miss it.
Until then, keep asking the hard questions.
Embrace the thrashing, and for the love of everything, stop analyzing the last move.
What you just listened was the beginning of a full audio, way longer, explaining every single chapter of the book. If you would like to keep listening to the end and access to the full audio, you can access it with the link down below in the description and in the pinned comment.